cigarette burnt down slowly in the ashtray. I didn't smoke, or at least I didn't then. A brown smudge on the mirror buffered me from my own reflection. Probably a good thing considering I don't really know who I am anymore, I thought. The sound of the water spouting from the tap and spiraling down the drain with a great gurgle left me completely absorbed. My hands gripped tightly around the basin rim. Smoke from the cigarette drifted in my face. "It's not you, it's me," I said. My grip loosened from the dish and I sipped the whiskey from my glass. A vein in my head suddenly began to swell, blood pumped wildly and I was ready to explode. A detonation sequence had been initiated and a carnivorous throbbing felt like the recoil of a baseball bat. My eyes started to ache from the pressure. "This migraine. Just give me to the end of the mill." A man wearing a grey suit with a purple tie walked into the bathroom. He was smiling. He turned around and left as soon as he saw me talking to myself. I wasn't surprised. The tap was still running, so I washed my face to cool down. The headache faded, then vanished completely. I knew it would. "It's been fun and you're amazing. The best. Number one. Nothing compares, but you deserve the fairy tale, the happy ending. I never like ending it with a girl. It tends to get messy and someone always gets hurt. That's why I tried to avoid the danger zone at all costs. If things ever get too close, I cut them off. Although, some women are just hard to leave unattended, especially when those women are totally obsessed. They'll call you late at night and ask to come over. Some of them will even use a lame excuse to get their foot in the door. Others will just lay their cards on the table. But both will eventually, and inevitably, start nesting. Every time they call, you know you should turn them away, tell them it's over and cut all connection completely. But you don't. Instead you fuck them so stupid they begin to fall in love with you. And once they're smitten like a kitten, head over heels in honey, you'll get scared and leave them like you always do. From the start, you tell them you have no room in your life for anything serious and that a little fun is all you can handle. So it's not like you were never up front. But none of that matters when they fall in love with you. Again, you'll be playing the arsehole. Fuck. I took another sip of whiskey. The glass is empty, nothing but a half-melted ice cube. "Yeah, sure I love you," I practiced. "I just think you'd be better off without me. You don't need some alcoholic, drug-dependent wannabe writer in your life. With smarts like yours, you're going to be successful. Make a difference, you know. You'll meet a guy, not like me, but a nice guy." I heard the chain flush. A man wearing a suit exited the cubicle behind me. "Making room for more, eh?" I said, rather rudely, before turning back to the basin. "More drinks, man, myself. I've got no time for food. How else you expect to stay so fit?" I wasn't fit, more malnourished. The man said nothing as he washed his hands in the basin next to me. He looked like the type of guy who had probably taken a wrong turn in his life. Like once upon a time he might have been destined for great things. Law or medicine, maybe. But I knew as well as he did it hadn't panned out the way he'd expected. Nothing ever does. He turned to me. His eyes were tired and lost. "All right for some, eh?" he said as he wiped his hands with a paper towel. I said nothing, staring back at him stupidly before taking another sip from my glass. It was empty. "They should make these bloody things bigger," I said. When I looked up, he had gone. I remained still, reluctant to leave the confines of the bathroom and face up to my dues. A waft of cigarette smoke caught my nostrils. It tingled like mustard. I was nervous, so I took a drag. It made me cough, but I forget about Caitlin. I took another puff, this time savouring the sensation before stubbing the butt out in the tray and exiting the bathroom. When I arrived back at the table, Caitlin was on the phone. She ended the conversation when I sat down. "Have you been smoking?" she asked. I signalled the waiter, raised my glass and shook it from side to side. "2 more when you're ready, please, Jeeves." He smiled, a genuine smile. I'd tip him big at the end of the evening. I turned back to Caitlin. She was staring furiously at me, ripping apart a napkin, shaking her head disheartenedly. "Have you been smoking?" she said, this time loud enough so the whole restaurant heard her. Jeeves turned up with our drinks. I took mine and took a sip before slouching back in my chair. No, but I'm thinking of starting. What? Nothing. So you haven't been smoking? No, I haven't. You stink of smoke. It's not my smoke. Fine, she said, flipping open her menu and holding it in front of her face. I took another sip of whiskey before pulling the menu away from her face. Look, Caitlin, there is something I've been meaning to tell you, I said. She was wearing the red dress I liked. Her breast looked firm, succulent and ripe. I got hard on. Well, what is it? She said, sounding not even the slightest bit concerned. The thing is, Caitlin, is that... You know, it's been 6 months today, she said. What has? Since we first fucked. It's been 6 months, and I've been thinking that maybe we should step things up a notch. I saw her idea of our future played out like a movie in her eyes. I watched and I didn't like what I saw. We can't see each other anymore, I said bluntly, hiding behind my drink. Her face dropped. What did you just say? She sounded pissed. I started to ramble. We can't see each other anymore, Caitlin. It's not you, it's me. You'll be successful, destined for great things. You'll find a man, a nice man, honest. She leapt from her seat. Fuck you, Dane, you fucking piece of shit, she roared. Now everyone in the restaurant was looking at us. A young boy even started to record us on his phone. Caitlin, I'm really sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. She screamed, fuck you. You were more than happy to have me suck your dick in the car on the way here, you bloody pig. It was true, I did, but... In my defence, Kate, you did owe me. For that time in the church reception, remember? I fucking hate you, you low-life shit-sucking wanker bastard. Fuck you. I heard a few gasps from the older crowd, a couple of sniggers from the guys in the room, and of course, the united heckles from the females. He's not worth it, babe. You're a scumbag. You don't deserve a lovely-looking girl like her. Yeah, fuck off back to the hole you crawled out from, loser. I laughed, raising my glass to the crowd. Evelyn Davison would be proud, guys. I turned to Caitlin and smiled. Kind of feel like throwing myself in front of a horse right about now, if I'm honest. Starting to feel like got more than one pair of hands wrapped around my manhood, if you know what I mean. She punched me. I took it as her answer. I fell off my chair, spilling my drink, looking ridiculous. The women in the audience cheered. Suppose I deserved that, I said, picking myself up from the floor and plonking down in my chair. I signalled Jeeves for another drink. He provided immediately. He was a good man. The quick service meant he cared. I turned to my recent ex-girlfriend. She was fuming, her face red, fists clenched, a furious look in her eyes that I couldn't help but find sexy. I got hard. Look, Caitlin, I'm sorry. I really didn't want to hurt you. It's just I'm not ready for this. She threw a drink over me and stood from her chair, put on her coat and picked up her bag. Get fucked, Dwayne. I watched her leave. Her ass made sure I would remember her. After that, I ordered some food and a few more drinks. Then I called for the bill, tipped Jeeves £5 and left. Outside, I discovered my tyres had been slashed, so I set off walking. On the way back, I stopped off on London Road and bought a bottle of rum and a packet of cigarettes. Later that night, I watched porn, got drunk, smoked a dozen cigarettes, watched more porn, then passed out. The next morning, as soon as I woke up, I reached for my cigarettes. To this day, I still can't quite believe how quickly I became hooked. I'd done heroin a dozen times, but never felt the need to use the drug regularly. Yeah, I take one drag of a cancer stick in some swanky restaurant toilets, and now I'm lighting up before I've even emptied my liquor-filled bladder. 2. After my breakup with Caitlin, I felt free. I could finally breathe. I was finally my own man again. I didn't feel trapped. I didn't feel depressed. I didn't feel guilty. I just felt nothing. Now, it's not that I never liked Caitlin. Of course I did. I mean, how couldn't I? With that rocking body, firm set of voluptuous tits and killer smile, she was the pinnacle of teen boy masturbation. I even jacked off over a picture of her myself a couple of times when she was away visiting her cousins in Bristol. And at one point, I even thought I loved her. It was during my downfall, around 3 months before the split, and I'd been having a little trouble coping with the death of a friend. Weeks of nothing but drugs, alcohol, prostitutes, and self-obliteration consumed me, and me them. One morning, I tried to kill myself, but a random phone call from Caitlin stopped me dead in my tracks. She'd called to ask about a book I'd said she could borrow. I put the razor blade down and told her to come over and pick it up. When she arrived, we fucked. I forgot about killing myself, and after that we just started getting close. Then it ended up being too close. Maybe I should think about doing some work today. It's been over 2 weeks since I first promised CalMag that piece on cannibalism. Must be due any day now, I thought, staring at my typewriter propped up on my bedroom desk. It had started to collect dust. I finished my cigarette, poured myself a glass of port and necked it in one. When I went for a piss, I urinated on the toilet seat, just because I could. The cupboards in my kitchen were empty, so was the fridge, and all the food I had in the house was a half-eaten flapjack and a box of cornflakes. I settled on cornflakes and rum for breakfast. I read the paper while I ate. Then the phone rang. I let it ring through, but they called straight back. I picked it up. Hello? Dwayne, it's Kingsley. Yeah? Kingsley was an old friend of mine. I'd known him since we were kids. We'd attended the same primary school together, then secondary school together. We even managed to get kicked out at the same time, but for completely different offences. Kingsley was permanently expelled for vandalising school property and possession of cannabis. At the same time, on the same day, I got caught fucking Celia Radcliffe in the teacher's break room. Lewis Bonfire is on tonight, he said. I know. Okay, so you're coming? Yes. Fancy a drink now? After work, I'll call you later. I hung up. The rest of the day was dedicated to work. At 5:45 p.m. I stepped away from my typewriter, poured a glass of rum and sparked a cigarette. After that I called Kingsley. Where are you? I said. Dwayne, you'll never guess what these girls are wearing. Suddenly everything went muffled. He was shuffling around on the other end. Give us your number, babe. I heard the girl respond. Fuck off, you creep. You're ugly anyway. His voice became clearer. Where are you? I said. At the train station. Where are you? At home. Wait there, I'll leave now. Okay, hurry, the train leaves in 15 minutes. I was still naked, so with haste I threw my t-shirt and jeans on, stuffed my pockets with a few £20 notes and a load of change, finished off the last of my rum and headed out the door. On the way there, I stopped and bought another packet of cigarettes and a few beers for the journey. When I arrived, the station was heaving with life, packed to the brim with social scum. I pushed my way to the front of the queue. Only one person called me on it. I told him to fuck off. Afterwards, I felt kinda bad. When I reached the front, the train pulled up to the platform. Just in time, Kingsley said, as we stepped on board the crowded train. I nodded. There were no seats, so we had to stand. All right, Naomi, I said. Good, thanks. How about you, Michelle? Not bad, thanks, babe. Work had been grinding me to the bone, though. Would you believe that my fucking car insurance is due again? Naomi and Michelle were friends of Kingsley's. He knew them through his family in London, but the girls had moved down to Brighton about a year ago. They'd hung with us ever since. Naomi sucked a great dick. Michelle knew how to ride a dick. They were both batshit crazy. I put that down to cocaine. Someone slashed my tyres, I said. Who? Michelle said. No, actually, let me guess, Caitlin. Yes. You ended things with her, didn't you? Yes. She went crazy, made a scene, didn't she? Unfortunately, yes, she did. You took her to the restaurant, didn't you? And you let her suck your dick in the car, I'm sure. I nodded. An old lady sat in one of the seats opposite us stared at me like I was some kind of deformity. Will you ever learn? Michelle said. No, probably not. I cracked open a beer. The train jerked and we took off. The girls cheered before both simultaneously pulling a baggie full of cocaine out from the inside their bras. Michelle flashed a nipple at me. The old lady caught a glimpse too. She shuddered. I winked at her. Naomi proceeded to sniff a small mound of coke from her fingertips before passing me the bag. It was shit coke and I wasn't in the mood to be blowing my nose all night, so I sprinkled a bit of the powder into my beer instead. A couple next to me were talking about something they had read in the newspaper. I was eavesdropping. So did they find the girl? Yep, they sure did. She'd been dumped by the side of the tracks just outside of Lewis. Jesus. Yeah, but you haven't heard the half of it. She'd been beaten and burnt and the skin had been removed from her face and breasts. And the really weird part, on her back there were these strange markings carved in her skin. What kind of markings? They're not sure, or at least they're not telling us anyway. From the photos I've seen, it looks like an Enochian language. You really believe that shit? I blurted. Sure, why not? He said. Do you not think the person who did this is just some guy who got raped by his stepdad and belittled by his mother his whole life? And now, maybe he's fallen into some weird and twisted lifestyle. The only way he can deal with his puny and worthless existence is by dissecting some stranger, carving total nonsense in their skin and using their blood as lubrication while he pleasures himself. This planet's fucked up enough. You really don't need to look any further than right here at home if you want to find the root of any evil. We'd been on the train a little less than 10 minutes and already I'd engaged myself in a heated debate with a total stranger. The cocaine I'd mixed with my beer hadn't been as shoddy as I'd first expected, and this fueled the spark which ignited my flame of contest. There is no way something came here from another planet and raped and mutilated this girl. It just wouldn't happen, I said. Maybe it's not from another planet. Maybe it's been here all along. You never think that maybe the universe is more than just an environment that harbours rock, gas and physical beings? No. Or maybe you should. There is more to life than that which you see in front of you. Sounds like hippie bullshit to me. Suddenly there was a sharp jolt from the train and the brakes slammed on. A hauling screech pierced through the carriage. We came to a dead halt. I stumbled, nudging Michelle's breast with my shoulder. She smiled. Then the lights switched off. The moonlight crept through the carriage. No one said a word. I turned and faced out the window, staring at the tracks below. Who's got a lighter? I said, pulling my cigarettes from out my jeans pocket. My opponent voiced his opinion. I don't want to be breathing your dirty second-hand smoke, thank you very much. I stayed facing out the window. I'll take that as a no then. Anyone else? Naomi passed me a lighter. Thanks. I sparked up. That's when I felt a chilling frost settle through the coach. The hairs on my neck stood up and I began to shiver. I stayed staring out of the window and onto the tracks. A girl in a white dress was crawling along the gravel. Her clothes were torn and soaked in blood. I watched as she made her way from the tracks and began clambering up the bank. What the fuck is that? The whole train was silent. The only thing I could hear were the sounds of my own heartbeat. Boom, 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 boom. The girl stood up and stared straight at me. I got goosebumps. She was crying, but she looked beautiful. Her skin appeared soft and was a lifeless white. She had delicate features and bright sparkling eyes, and they twinkled in the night. I waved at her. She smiled back at me. Quick, someone call the police. There's a girl on the tracks. I think she's hurt, I shouted. But again, no one answered. That's when I turned around. There was no one there. The carriage was empty. The lights flickered, crackling fiercely before spurting back on. The train was moving and full of people again. Kingsley handed me a beer. I cracked it open and took a sip. What's up with you? You look like you've seen a ghost, he said. How could I explain such a thing? I couldn't. I'd sound crazy. It's nothing. Just thought I saw something weird on the tracks, that's all. Must have been my reflection in the glass. I turned to my opponent. Or maybe I saw an alien or a spiritual being. I was being sarcastic. He said nothing and attempted to ignore me. I saw a twinge of hatred in his eyes and felt my mission had been completed. After that, the rest of the trip was pretty uneventful. I stood staring out the window drinking my beer. Naomi and Michelle spoke about the usual bullshit. Work, clothes, boys and sex. Whilst Kingsley tried it on with some redhead we knew from back in school. He got her number, but I knew it was fake. I'd slept with her about a month before. She slipped me her real number as we got off the train. It was still the same as before. I'd never been a big fan of Lewis. A small, peaceful county town with not much to do except eat tea and scones or sit in the local pub playing a quiz machine. The buildings are fancy, streets are clean, people friendly although a little pretentious, and the nature of the place comes with a real sense of community. It is Brighton's little brother, the one that went to boarding school. I would never have visited the place if it hadn't been for Guy Fawkes Night, for which the normally peaceful town holds the biggest parade and fireworks display in the whole of the UK, and people flock from all over to join the festivities, so I always felt obliged to attend. By 6:30 PM the streets were flooded with people. I just wanted to sit down and drink. We were stuck at the bottom of the long hill. The parade usually started from the top and marched down. "We'll head up the hill, sit in the graveyard like we did last year," I said. I pushed through the crowd. The others followed. On the way there, some girl grabbed my dick and we kissed. She giggled, then ran off. I found out later she was some girl I fingered in Audio nightclub a couple of years back. 4. I spotted her standing by the main entrance of the church. She was wearing a white silk dress. It was a tad unusual considering the nature of the event, but she looked incredible. My lips were wrapped around the end of a bottle of Jack Daniels, a cigarette burning down slowly in my hand. Sat on top of a grave, my eyes were glued to her beauty like a cat to its prey. Her face was lit up like a lantern in the darkness. The gleams of torches and flames trooping through the streets kept her in a rippling shadow. She smiled at me. I raised my bottle, then stood up. "I'll be right back." The others looked around, then spotted the girl. "Dwayne, you fucking randy dog," Naomi said. She waved at the girl. I took a sip of Jack. "I'm just going over to say hi," I said. "Sure, and China isn't Asia." "Whatever." I left and walked over to the girl. "Hi," I said. "Hi. Fancy a drink?" I offered her the bottle. "Sure. So what's your name?" She took a sip from the bottle before she answered. She spilt some and it rolled down her chin and onto her breasts. She giggled promiscuously. Jess." "What a waste, Jess, do you mind?" I said, eyeing up the splash of whiskey on her breasts. She laughed, flicking her long blonde hair over her shoulders. "Sure." I licked the whiskey from her breasts and nuzzled my nose in her cleavage. She grabbed my head and pushed me in further. Then we kissed passionately. She ended it when I tried to slip my fingers up her skirt. "Not here," she whispered. "Where then?" "I want to party first." "Okay. I know the perfect place." Told the others that I was leaving, then we left. She led me inside of the church and into a confession booth. I kissed her passionately on the lips before sliding my fingers under her dress. Her pussy was warm, the skin soft and hairless. She grabbed my cock and squeezed my balls with the other hand. "Wait," she said. "What for?" "I'm a virgin." "Okay. Do you mind?" "No." "Does it make me more attractive?" "No, you'd be stunning either way." "Thanks. No problem." "I don't want to do it here." "Then where?" She smiled, then pushed the back wall of the booth. Heard a click and the wall swung open. "Down there," I said, staring down a narrow stone passage. "Yeah. Why, are you scared?" "No." "Good, then it's settled then." We made our way down the passage. After a couple of minutes we entered a large room. It was empty. On the floor was a large engraving of an eye. She laid on it and opened her legs. "Deflower me." I climbed on top of her. She pulled my cock out from my trousers and held it firmly. I kissed her neck, squeezing her breasts, and she stroked my shaft. "Put it in me, pop my cherry," she whispered. I laughed. For a virgin, she was extremely eager. Circling my tip around her clit, I stabbed gently at the hole, teasing her before slipping myself slowly inside of her. She let out a small squeak. Her nails dug into my back. I pushed in further. This time she screamed. Her blood soaked my boxers. "Do you want me to stop?" "No, it's fine." I fucked her slowly, but after the initial entry, she started to get into it. Her hands wrapped firmly around my arse. Every time she bit her bottom lip, I wanted to come. Suddenly a female's voice screamed from behind me. "No, what have you done?" I felt someone grab my shoulders and they yanked me off Jess. I fell next to her. My cock was still hard and erect. A group of people in black hoods surrounded me. I tried to fight them off, but there were too many. They pinned me to the floor. I watched as they drenched Jess in gasoline. She screamed, "You're too late. It's been done." "You stupid fucking man, what have you done?" one of the hoodies said to me. "Nothing. I didn't do anything. I just fucked her. Killed a witch." She squirmed, screaming and shouting as she tried to free herself from the grip. She was spitting and hissing, the veins bulging from her head and neck, eyes black and soulless. She started to shriek. She no longer looked human. She looked like a monster. I heard a strike from the match, then there was a blinding light. When my eyes refocused, I saw Jess burning alive in front of me. She wasn't screaming. Her eyes made contact and she smiled. A piece of skin melted from her face, revealing the bone underneath. She began to wail in some strange language. Then she exploded. The blast had freed me from my captors and the dust kept me covered. I saw my chance to escape and I took it. I heard a female voice shout after me, "You can't run away from this. You have to come back. You don't have much time." I didn't take any notice. They wanted to kill me. When I stepped out of the church, I noticed the others had gone. Back to Brighton it is then. Thank fuck, I thought. The queue at the train station was huge. After what I'd just seen, I needed a drink. There were no shops open. I ended up buying half a bottle of vodka off a school kid for double the price. I'd been in the queue for about an hour when I got talking to the girl. "Where are you from?" I asked. "Brighton." "Me too." "Cool. You're pretty fit." "Thanks." I kissed her and pulled her in closely. While we waited in the queue, I fingered her through a hole she'd made in her tights. When we got on the train, she tossed me off on the luggage rack. The passengers politely ignored us. After I got off the train, I passed out, and when I woke up, I was in my bed with no recollection as to how I got there. This wasn't really unusual though, just another morning. I stepped out of bed, grabbed a bottle of whiskey from my cabinet and slumped myself in front of my TV. I scratched my balls and flicked on the news. There was some report on about a rape that took place on Crocodile Walk. I was still shaken up from what I'd seen in the church, so I switched it off. The phone rang. "It's Kingsley. What do you want? I'm tired." "I got a couple of girls with me." "How old?" 19 and 20. "Okay." 5. I hadn't expected much from Kingsley and his girls, but I didn't mind. All women are beautiful creatures in my eyes, and all deserve as much attention as the next. To fuck and not give a fuck is just weak-spirited. If a woman is kind enough to open her legs, then you should take it upon yourself to fuck that pussy like a well-crafted sportsman, put on a fucking show. At the end of it, she should be content. The next day, she should be desperate for more. When Kingsley and the girls arrived, I was more than surprised when I came face to face with two of the most beautiful girls I'd ever seen. Long black hair, covered in tattoos and facial piercings, firm tits, long legs, nice bums. They were pretty much what my porno collection was made of. And when I found out they actually were from my porno collection, I nearly ejaculated. Apparently Kingsley's sister was a photographer for some fashion magazine. She'd landed a random gig shooting for the Suicide Girls. She was housing the girls while they were down in town for the shoot. When Kingsley found out, he went straight over. Turned out they were cool as fuck, not like the usual model types I'd met. After they arrived, Kingsley and one of the girls went into my spare bedroom to fuck. I got talking to the other one. "I'm Dwayne. Tamsin. Fancy a drink, Tamsin?" "Fuck yes, I'd love a drink." "Jack Daniels okay with you?" She lifted her top over her breasts. She had a Jack Daniels tattoo on the left one. "Nice," I said, eyeing her up playfully. "So where else you got those piercings?" I looked down at her crotch. "We haven't even started drinking yet," she said. "Usually guys get me drunk before they try and fuck me." "Yeah, I never got that. Fuck first, drink later, I say." "Yeah, then fuck again after." "Exactly. You're weird." "Nah, I just like to keep things casual." She laughed, then looked around curiously. "So which way's your bedroom?" "Down the hall, first door on your left." "Okay. I'll meet you in there." She kissed me on the cheek before walking to my room. I went into the kitchen to grab a bottle of whiskey and a couple of glasses. The air was cold, like it had been on the train on the way to Lewis. My breath fogged in front of my face. Then suddenly, darkness. I dropped the bottle and it smashed at my feet. My head started to ache and I was dripping with sweat. I heard something scurry across my kitchen floor. It shrieked and giggled. It was all around me, bound by fear and unable to move. I was trapped. Tap, tap, tap. It was getting closer. I could hear its nails scraping across the kitchen tiles, edging in towards me. I turned to run, but every movement left me facing in the same direction. It passed by the microwave. The dial of lights lit it up just for a second. It was some kind of gremlin, small, pointy ears, long fingernails with a hairy back. Suddenly the fear evaporated. I was bound by its spell. I closed my eyes. When they opened, The bottle of Jack Daniels was still gripped firmly in my hand, and the lights had come back on. Had I imagined it? I blew out a long breath. I couldn't see anything. What the fuck is wrong with me? I thought. When I walked into my room, Tamsin was sprawled out naked on the bed. She was holding my guitar. I got hard on. I threw the bottle of Jack on the bed, then sat next to her. She opened up and took a sip. Perfect, she said. I ran my hand up her leg. My fingers came up to her pussy and I stroked her clit. She flinched, biting her bottom lip. I pulled my cock from my trousers. She grabbed it and began tossing me off. My guitar fell from her chest and landed on the bedroom floor. I climbed on top of her and sucked on her tits. My fingers slid deep in her pussy. She was soaking. Fuck me, Dwayne. Sure, why not? She angled my cock towards her cunt and I slipped it in. She moaned. I went in deeper. She moaned louder. Her eyes glazed over, muscles tensed in anticipation. Slap me, she demanded. I slapped her. Harder, she shouted. I punched her. It knocked her out. Shit, Tamsin. Tamsin, you okay? She didn't respond. I checked her breathing. She wasn't dead. Fuck. Sorry. Then a voice told me to keep fucking her. I said no. When she finally came to, she told me not to worry about it. Accidents happen, she said. Then we fucked. This time, I let her punch me in the face. She broke my nose. After sex, I fell asleep. When I woke up, Tamsin was gone. There was a prepared line of drugs on my nightstand. I sniffed it, then went back to sleep. 6. I'm asleep, but something wakes me up. A strange noise is coming from the kitchen. My heart starts to race, beating wildly in my chest. The noise gets louder. I hear someone come into my room. The darkness hides them from me, but I can hear them breathing. Sounds of footsteps shuffle across the floorboards towards me. The loose board in the centre of the room creaks like it always does. Then suddenly, I'm swarmed with delusion. Thoughts of rape and murder buzzing madly inside of me. An overwhelming lust for blood unexpectedly prevails. I get out of bed. When I open my bedroom door, I see there's a man in my hallway. He's naked. So am I. His skin is bright red and leathery, dripping in a clear, jelly-like liquid. He's tall, muscular and strong. I call for him. Who are you? He says nothing. I step closer. He smells like sex. What do you want from me? He gives no reply. I scream, who are you? When he finally turns to me, I see he's not a man. He's a demon. I'm staring into a mouth full of jagged fangs and razor-sharp teeth. His nose is long and pointy, covered in boils and pimples. One massive eye bulges from its head and it glares hungrily at me. Sounds dangerous. He could have been a serial killer. She laughed. No, not Harry. He works in accounting. Then it's even more likely. All those numbers would drive anyone to murder. I'm a writer and sometimes that even makes me want to rip out someone's teeth with a pair of pliers, you know? You're a writer. Aspiring. What do you write? Articles, mostly. I write for a magazine called CalMag. What? You write for CalMag? I love that magazine. It's so funny and at the same time absolutely terrifying. I don't remember seeing your name in any issues. I'm surprised you heard of it. I write under my pen name, Chucky Delgado. She gasped. You did that piece on the ragdoll killer, didn't you? Yes. Did you really get to meet him? Yes. What was he like? Batshit crazy, although strangely quite a nice guy. She giggled, staring at me with her big blue eyes before taking a sip of her drink. You want to get out of here? She said. Sure. Where you want to go? I don't know, maybe you could show me some of your work. Her tone was promiscuous. That would be back at my place. Well, what are we waiting for? We didn't waste any more time. I paid the bill, tipped the bartender and we left. On the way home we stopped off at a chemist and bought a packet of condoms. I'd run out. My apartment was filthy, but Sarah didn't mind. I cleaned up my room a bit quickly anyway. When she came in, she headed straight over to my typewriter. A stack of paper next to the machine caught her eye. She started flicking through the pages, her eyes scrolling across them. She smiled, probably at something she read. I went up behind her, wrapped my arms around her waist and kissed her neck. I felt her hands touch mine. "You're just using me for sex," she said. She pushed me away. "That's not true. I thought we were using each other." "Don't try to be cute. I've read your writing, remember?" "What's that got to do with anything?" "Women and sex seem to be a frequent topic of yours." "So? I haven't done anything to lead you on, and I certainly haven't pretended to be anything I'm not. So what's the problem? You're the one who suggested we come here." "Yes, but to look at your work." "Fuck off, that's bullshit and you know it." My blood started to boil. A furious anger welled up inside me. I wanted to kill Sarah, but I didn't know why. The demon's face was from a nightmare was bedded in my mind. He was talking to me. "Rape her," he said. "Sex is nature. She can't fight against nature." What is happening to me? I thought. I've never hurt a woman in my life. My thoughts were nothing but fire and brimstone, blood and carnage. I imagined Sarah being raped by a huge beast with sharp horns. A tall, naked man holding a tray of candles dances around them. He says nothing, only smiles. "You need to leave," I shouted. She flinched. I saw the fear in her eyes. "What? What's wrong with you?" "Get out, now." I was pouring with sweat and my skin felt like it was on fire. I was going to rape this girl. The tip of my penis had started burning, the shaft throbbing like it was ready to explode. My throat was dry and I started to lose my breath. Sarah stared at me in struck horror. She looked physically sick. "Are you okay?" she said. She went to touch me and I snapped. I didn't hold back. Smack! The punch knocked her back and she fell into my desk, banging her head on the side of my typewriter. She had a timid yelp before collapsing on my bedroom floor. Her eyes gazed up at me, welling in tears. "Please, don't do this," she begged. I vomited. She screamed. I had a sudden change of heart. "Just go." She scrambled from the floor and ran out of the house. When she was gone, I continued to throw up. The whole time I was staring into my toilet, I expected the police to run in and arrest me for assault and attempted rape. They didn't. The sickness lasted for hours. I'd puke up, pass out, then wake up and puke again. While I was asleep, I'd dream about the red, naked man with one eye. He kept telling me to let him in. Every time I saw him, I'd get hard. He would try and rape me and I'd be terrified, yet I'd still be aroused. When the sickness finally wore off, the only thing I could think about was more sex. I got myself ready to head out to a club. 7. It was raining that night and there was a biting frost in the air, but I wasn't cold. In just jeans and a t-shirt, I was sweating. Volk's nightclub was packed and the queue became my place in the party for the first half an hour of the night. The waves from the ocean crashed right on the shoreline. The swirls of water out at sea were mesmerizing. I imagined fucking a girl on the pebbly beach of Brighton. Then I made it my mission. A small, well-stacked brunette in the flock caught my attention. I cut in front of a couple of punters and introduced myself. "I'm Dwayne Hunter. You're beautiful, by the way. What's your name?" She turned and stared at me strangely. I guess she wasn't used to guys being so forward. But then she smiled. It's Grace. You always start with that line?" "No, not always. Sometimes I just spike their drink." I tried to act serious. I sparked up a cigarette to cover my smile. She laughed. "That why you called Hunter?" "I don't know, maybe." I pulled a half-litre of whiskey from my jeans back pocket. At the same time, Grace pulled a wrap full of drugs from her bra. "Make a trade?" she said. "What is it?" "Ketamine." "Sure." She pinched a bump from the wrap in her fingers and placed them under my left nostril. I sniffed. The drug shot up my nasal passage and trickled down my throat. The taste was bitter. I handed her the whiskey. She took a big swig. The security guard was staring at us. I flashed him a 20 note and he smiled. When we finally got to the door, I slipped the security guard a 20 plus our entrance fee. He shook my hand and then brushed us inside. Sarah went and got us seats in the smoking area while I got us drinks. The girl who served me was a stunning redhead with huge tits. I saw a copy of CalMag behind the counter. "What can I get you?" she said. "Do you know what I'd really like?" "What?" "Your number." Bit forward, isn't ya? Just don't like wasting time. So how about it? How do I know you're not a rapist? My name is Chucky Delgado. She froze, then went on like she didn't know who I was. So what does that mean to me? You could still be a rapist. I'm not a rapist, and if I am, well, hopefully I'm a nice one. You're weird. So people keep saying. She wrote her number down on a napkin. She signed it Vicky and dotted her eyes with little hearts. So what else can I get you? She said. I took the napkin from the bar and put it in my pocket. Rum and coke and a straight whiskey. She was quick with the drinks. I paid and tipped her, and I said I'd call her during the week. Then I went to find Grace. When I got outside to the smoking area, Grace hadn't found her seats. I didn't even think she'd attempted. She was stood flirting with a young male in a night tracksuit. The rage built up inside me again, and I suddenly wanted to rape and kill the pair of them. The thought of penetrating Grace's pussy uninvitingly gave me an erection. I wanted to rape and kill her and make Mr. Night watch, then rape him as well. I was losing breath, hyperventilating in the middle of a crowded club. Everyone started staring at me. I necked back my whiskey. It calmed me down immediately. I quickly threw back Grace's rum and coke, then placed the plastic cups on the floor. Sorry, the bar was packed. I'll go back in a bit. What are you doing anyway? I could feel my teeth grinding. I don't know how they didn't notice. Hey Dwayne, where are the drinks? Never mind. Who's this? I didn't even look at him. My eyes stayed locked on Grace. This is my brother Tony. Your brother? The anger settled. I pulled my cigarettes from my pocket. Nice to meet you, Tony. You too, Dwayne. Anyway, sorry, but I've got to go. Where are you going? Grace asked. I have to take a rig up to the free party. Where's the free party? I said. It's up at Devil's Dyke. You guys should come. It should be good. Yeah, might do. Cheers. After Tony left, Grace and I went back into the club. We danced, drank and spoke about shit for a few hours before finally sharing a kiss in the lobby. I got a hard on and I felt a sudden urge to fuck her there and then. She looked at me strangely. I guess she saw the look in my eyes. I grabbed her hand and pulled her out of the club. Come with me, I said. She laughed nervously. Why? Where are we going? Down on the beach. What? Why? To drink beer and sniff drugs. She smiled. I sensed her sigh of relief. Sure, but it's raining. We'll get soaked. We'll sit under the cafe. Okay. It didn't take me long to get inside her knickers. After a couple of shots and a line of ketamine, she was good to go. I laid her out on the wet concrete and knelt over her face. She sucked me off while I played with her tits. Each succulent stroke she took on my cock left me feeling more powerful, and for some reason, the only thing I could think about was how much I hated her. I just wanted to dominate her. She smiled as she bobbed up and down my cock, slavering it in her saliva and stroking my shaft with both her hands. I pushed her off me. You fucking slut, I burst. Then I gasped and covered my mouth. What the fuck am I doing? I thought. I can't let this happen again. But still, I found myself climbing on top of her. She screamed, Please get off me. Suddenly, I found the will to leave her be. I stood up and helped her from the floor. I'm sorry, sometimes I can get a little rough. She shook her head. Not cool, man, not cool at all. I know, I'm a dick, sorry. Let me buy you a drink. No, thanks, I'm alright. Come on, just one drink. I'll behave, I promise. My ex-girlfriend was a crazy bitch. She used to like getting punched in the face while we did it. I'm still a little confused as to where the boundaries are these days. When did you break up? She asked. About a week ago. Oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. So let me buy you a drink. Sure. We didn't go back to the club. Instead, we went to a bar on West Street called Oxygen. It was a shot bar. We drank our weight in shots. I paid, of course. Then, we fucked in the men's toilets. I didn't rape her. 8. The sex I had with Grace was good, but the frightful craving that was burning inside of me was still ablaze. The yearning still unfulfilled. I tried convincing Grace to come back to my place. She said no and jumped in a taxi home. Every shred of my consciousness was telling me to do the same thing, but before I knew it, I was stepping on a bus and headed up to Devil's Dyke. The bus driver didn't smile when I got on. I imagined slitting his throat while he gave me my change. The bus was empty. I sat at the top in the middle section and stared out the window. I screamed when I saw my reflection in the glass was not really my reflection. The one-eyed man stared back at me. The whole time he bared a smile. "Let me in," he said. I turned away from the window. A man in a clown suit was standing at the front of the bus. He was holding an axe. He smiled at me. I turned back to the window. The one-eyed man laughed at me. I punched the glass. He vanished. When I turned back to the front of the bus, the clown had gone too. I couldn't figure out what was happening to me. I also couldn't find the strength to care. I'd become its bitch. I took a sip of my beer and closed my eyes. The whole journey there, all I could hear was his voice. "Let me in. Let me in. Let me in." When I got off the bus, the voices stopped. The fresh air felt good, and by the time I had reached the dip in the hills where the party was being held, I felt positive that I was in total control. The drum and bass blasting from the rig was loud, too loud to be able to talk to anyone. Seeing anything proved to be just as difficult, the only light source being from a strobe light that would flick on and off between drops. The smell of burning wood was in the air. I spotted an omnipresent smog looming in the hills. There were people gathered round it, and they were laughing and drinking. A girl with big breasts caught my attention. I closed my eyes. The man with one eye was nowhere to be seen. It was safe to go over and socialise. I sat down next to the girl with big breasts. She had long brown hair, nice eyes, and was a bit chubby. Not that it matters. All women are beautiful to me. She glanced at me as I sat down. I smiled. Everyone else round the fire ignored me. I didn't mind. I wasn't there for them. "You had a good night?" she said. "It's been hell." "Same here." We said nothing for a while, staring despondently into the flames. I opened a bottle of Jack Daniels that I'd brought with me and took a sip. Some guy next to us was playing his guitar, a poorly performed cover of the Beatles song, "Hey Jude." "He sucks," I said. "Tell me about it. You play?" "Yeah." "Spike, sorry, what's your name?" "Dwayne." "Let Dwayne have a go on your guitar, Spike." He nodded and handed me the guitar. He was wearing a denim vest and had a green mohawk, and he called himself Spike. How original. I refrained from commenting on his disastrous outfit. Big Breasts and I already shared a mutual and unspoken understanding on the matter. "What are you going to play us?" she asked. The dimples in her chubby cheeks creased as she smiled at me. Her lips were gorgeous, voluptuous, moist and smooth looking. I imagined that she probably sucked a great dick with a pair of lips like that. "Little Wing by Jimi Hendrix," I said, staring at her lips. I got a hard on. My performance was by far my best. Big Breast knew it too. She was already wet. Afterwards, we sat and talked. It didn't take us long to get through the bottle of Jack Daniels that I'd brought with me, and by the time we were both pretty drunk. Big Breast had told me her name was Tammy, but I was so engulfed in the thought of squeezing her tits and fucking her pussy, by that time I didn't really care what her name was. I was eager to get her away from the fire and into the darkness, so I made my proposal. "They're selling beer down by the rig. Fancy one? Never say no to a free beer." We stood up and left. When we got down to the van where the beers were being sold, I told Tammy to head up to the other hill and wait for me. I said I wanted to look at the stars. She dispersed happily, and I went and got us drinks. £2.50 for a can of warm Fosters. On my way up to the hill, I decided on gathering some firewood to make a fire. For some reason, I was in the mood to burn something. Tammy thought it was a great idea. She said it was very romantic. It didn't take me long to get the fire going. The second I threw the match on the heap, it went up in flames. I sat down next to Tammy and put my arm around her. She looked at me and gazed into my eyes. "Why do you like me?" she said. She looked like she was about to cry. "What do you mean?" "Why would anyone like me? I'm fat and horrible." I touched her leg. She grabbed my cock. "Just 'cause you got a bit of shape to your figure doesn't mean you're fat and horrible. I actually think you're rather sexy and, well, let's not be shy about it, but you got some breasts on you that any girl would kill for." I saw the heat of passion in her eyes. She grabbed me, stuffing my face into her huge breasts. She massaged my cock. I slipped my fingers into the side of her knickers, shoved my middle finger into her wet cunt. With my thumb, I played with her clit. She moaned. You know the first thing I thought about when I saw you? I said, with my fingers still deep in her pussy. She started unbuttoning my jeans. Tell me, she said. I imagined what it would be like getting sucked off by such beautiful and full lips. She giggled as she whipped my cock out. I was rock hard. She grabbed it firmly in her hand and opened her mouth. Her fingers tickled my balls as she leant in to suck me. Then it happened. I was staring into the fire and my mind suddenly shut down. I felt someone, or something else, enter inside my body. I grabbed Tammy by the neck and threw her to the ground. In the flames, I could see the man with one eye. I kicked Tammy in the head and she passed out. Her breasts were exposed and so was her pussy. A voice, but not my voice, kept telling me to rape her. I couldn't do it. The voice screamed at me and I fell to my knees. Then, black. When I came to, my face was buried in Tammy's pussy and I was nibbling on her cunt. She was still passed out. I stuffed my fingers deep inside of her while I masturbated with a handful of mud. When I was ready to come, I put the tip of my penis in her mouth and blew my load into her throat. Then I passed out. I woke up in my bed, once again with no recollection as to how I got there. The last thing I remembered was what I'd done to Tammy. Once again, I expected the police to come barging through my door any minute, but they didn't. I knew I should have felt bad for what I'd done. For some reason, I didn't. Every time I tried to think about why, I'd end up thinking about sex. The light burning through my bedroom window torched my eyes like fire sparks. I put on my sunglasses. I'd been wearing my sunglasses a lot recently. My joints were aching and I could barely stand up. It took me 5 minutes to get over to the window and close the blinds. I didn't make it back. A sudden twisting sensation in my gut and I vomited. It landed on my bedroom floor and splashed on my feet. It was thick, black and lumpy. When I threw up again, it came out both ends. 9. Crawled to my bathroom. A trail of shit and vomit flowed behind me. The pain was excruciating. Every time the heaving would start, I thought I was going to pass out. Pressing my belly against the cold tiles was the only thing that would stop the burning inside of me. In my head, I pictured a mutant spawn growing in my guts, feeding off the depression and misfortune, and guiding me down to hell. The stops we make along the way are its choice, not mine. As I vomited into the toilet bowl, I felt someone standing behind me. I saw a red foot in the corner of my eye. I felt breathing down my neck and hands running up my back. I turned to face it. I was staring into a huge eye, the demon with one eye. "Let me in," he said. I bent over. I told him to fuck me. When he was done, he said nothing and left. I felt used, and I liked it. After that, all I could do was sleep. Every muscle in my entire body felt like it had been tenderized by a butcher. My bones felt brittle and weak, and the strength of my lungs was deteriorating. When I'd wake up, I'd vomit. It went on like this for days before I finally called a doctor. "Hello, Carden Surgery, how can I help?" "I need to see a doctor." "Okay, what's your name and I'll schedule you in for an appointment." "No, I need to see a doctor today. Put me through to Dr. Serval, he's my doctor." "He's busy at the moment, I'm afraid. Maybe I can just schedule in an appointment?" "Didn't you hear me? I need to see a doctor today. Tell Dr. Serval that Dwayne Hunter needs to speak to him right away. Tell him it's life or death." She put me on hold. I waited for about 5 minutes before Dr. Serval finally came to the phone. "What is it now, Mr. Hunter? I'm extremely busy." "Something is wrong with me." "You'll have to be a bit more specific." "I don't know, I'm sick and I've been asleep for days. My bones and muscles ache and I can't breathe and I don't..." I stopped and thought about what I was saying. Did I really want to tell a doctor that I thought I was losing my mind? I went with not. "You don't what, Mr. Hunter?" "I just don't feel well, okay? I think I'm dying." "Then call an ambulance, Mr. Hunter." No hospitals. Can't you just come see me?" "Fine, I will come after work. Until then, try and relax, Mr. Hunter." He hung up. For the rest of the day, I sat in front of my television set and fondled myself. By the time Dr. Serval knocked on my door, I'd wanked my way through my entire porn collection. My cock wasn't even sore. I don't know if it was the breeze from outside when I opened the front door, or the fact that I was in the presence of another human being for the first time in days, but for some reason, the sickness evaporated. I felt healthy again. Dr. Server was wearing his usual blue pinstripe suit. He had his stethoscope round his neck. I thought about strangling him with it. "So what seems to be the problem, Mr. Hunter?" He studied my current state. "Well, you look fine to me. Brilliant, in fact. This isn't just another one of your stunts to get Valium, is it, Mr. Hunter?" I turned away, and I made my way into the kitchen. He followed. "No, of course not," I said. "Then what's this all about? I have a flight to catch in an hour and you're holding me up." "Well, I've been getting these headaches and my stomach has been pretty bad too. I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. Just drink lots of water and just get plenty of rest." He pulled his prescription pad from his suit pocket. I saw a knife on my kitchen counter. "So where are you going on holiday? Anywhere nice?" I asked. I had my back to him. I picked up the knife. "I'm going to Vietnam for a few months," he replied. "Taking anyone special?" "No, just going by myself. Need some alone time." "Yeah, I get that. Here's your prescription." I turned round and stabbed him in the heart. He gasped, then struggled. Blood spewed from his mouth, his eyes rolled back in his head. I laughed, then I started to cry. His body was shaking around on my kitchen knife, jittering about like a naked man in the snow. Behind him was stood a clown with an axe. I recognized him. Balloons hung from strings and floated above his head. He wagged his finger at me and smiled. The naked man with one eye took his hand, and they left. Told me to enjoy myself. Dr. Server was dead. I pulled the blade from his heart. I heard a pop. The corpse plummeted to the ground. Then the phone rang. I answered it. "Hello? Where the hell have you been?" It was Kingsley. I looked at the dead body on my kitchen floor. The blood on my hands dripped from my fingertips. I tasted some. It was nice. "Dwayne, you there?" "Yes." "Where have you been?" "I've been working. You want to hang out?" "Well, I've just come into a load of fresh meat," I said, staring at my doctor's corpse. The wound where his heart was still spurting blood. "I should probably cook it before it goes bad. Fancy a barbecue?" "Sure, I'll give Naomi a call. She's got one of those industrial standard grills, and her folks just put in a new swimming pool." "Okay. I'll call you in an hour to confirm." "Fine." I hung up. After that, I wrapped Dr. Servo in cling film and dragged him to my bathroom. DIY had never been my thing, but when Caitlin had been around, she'd loved to cook, and she'd never come back to pick up her utensils. I suppose I'd bought them for her, all stainless steel, sharp and well-constructed pieces of art. I chopped Serval's limbs off using a meat cleaver, and then cut the flesh from the bone with a serrated bone saw. By the time I was done, the pieces looked like cuts of prime quality beef. I packaged the meat and got it ready for the shindig at Naomi's place. I decided on dissolving the rest of the body in acid when I returned back from the party. After the meat had been packaged and frozen, I mopped up the blood on the kitchen floor. Then I watched porn and masturbated. This time, I couldn't come. Not once. I was still hard when I left my apartment, and every girl I walked past was a struggle not to rape. I focused my breathing as I strolled down London Road with a carrier bag full of human flesh. Naomi lived on Withdean Avenue. Her folks were a couple of big-time lawyers and they owned one of the biggest houses in Brighton. Good thing I was friends with her. When I reached her driveway, I could hear her music playing from the back of the house. I rang the doorbell anyway. Michelle answered. "Hello, gorgeous," she said before giving me a casual hug. She smelt like honey and jasmine. I wanted to fuck her. I slapped her bum. She giggled and pulled me inside. "Kingsley tells me you bought us a feast." I smiled, holding up the bag. It had started to defrost in the summer weather. A splash of blood landed on the carpet. "Shit," she screamed. "Don't let Naomi see that. She'll go mad. You go out back and join the others. I'll clean this mess up." When I got outside, Kingsley was in the pool. He was laid on a rubber ring wearing a pair of sunglasses and sipping on a whiskey and ice. Naomi was lying on a deck chair enjoying the rays. She had her eyes closed and was topless. I snuck over and twisted her nipple. She shrieked, "Dwayne, you fucking freak." She didn't even open her eyes, but still she knew it was me. "Sorry, they just look so pretty." She giggled. "I do have nice tits, don't I?" "Yes, you do." I grabbed her left breast. She slapped my hand and then yanked it away. "Too nice for the likes of you, Dwayne." She stuck her tongue out. "You got told, mate," Kingsley heckled. I turned round and flipped him off. "Don't make me get out of here and kick your ass, Hunter." "I'd tear your throat out." "Sure you would. Where's this meat you promised us anyway?" he said. "In my hand." "Well, what are you waiting for? I'm starving." "I can't cook." "Get one of the girls to do it." "Michelle is the cook around here. I only ever use the microwave or order takeout," Naomi said. "I'll go find her. You boys get the grill fired up." 10. As I sat around Naomi's round oak garden table and enjoyed a delicious meal in the company of great people, the guys had got talking about current affairs. Michelle was talking about a mass murder she'd read about in the newspaper a few days ago. "It's been all over the news. I can't believe you guys haven't heard about it already." "Wait, so what exactly happened?" I asked, cutting a piece of meat from my steak and slavering it in barbecue sauce. "I'm not sure exactly. Just some guy killed a bunch of people on a night bus about a week and a half ago. How have you guys not heard about this?" "I don't watch the news," Kingsley said through a mouthful of meat and chips. "Where did this happen?" I asked. "It happened here in Brighton." Suddenly a horrible wave of reality hit me. I looked around and saw my friends eating the flesh of my doctor. I was a killer and I'd only just then realised it. What have I done? I thought. I'm a murderer. I've killed a human being. My friends are eating that human being. I'm sick. Really sick. "What bus?" I was starting to sweat, the voice in my head taunting me again. "I dunno, some bus headed up to Devil's Dyke. Why do you care so much anyway?" "I don't." Surely I couldn't have killed those people. There was no one on that bus that I got on, apart from the driver. But Michelle just said that the killer killed a bunch of people, not one person, I explained to myself. I started to calm down, although I was still in despair about what I'd done to Serval and my friends. I knew then I had to do something. I had to fight whatever it was growing inside of me. The only way I could think of doing that was to starve it out. I rose from my seat and necked back the last of my whiskey. "I've got to go." "Why?" Michelle asked. "I've got work to do." "That's all you ever do, mate," Kingsley said. "Some people work," I said. "Meet up during the week?" Michelle said. I knew I should have said no, but I couldn't. Not to Michelle. "Sure. Anyway, see you all later." "What about this meat?" Naomi said. "Keep it." When I got home, I handcuffed myself to the radiator and drank a whole bottle of Jack Daniels to knock me out. It didn't work. I had to break myself free from the radiator and an hour later go to the local off-license to grab a 12-pack of beers and a bottle of Morgan Spice rum. I made it there and back with no incidents. When I returned, I handcuffed myself to another radiator, this time chaining my legs to it too. As I sat on my living room floor, bound and drinking myself to unconsciousness, I saw a puff of smoke rise from the floor. The man with one eye appeared in front of me. "Well done, Dwayne. You've come a long way. You let me in, thank you. Now it's time for you to meet the others." "What do you mean, the others?" He snarled at me, his razor-sharp teeth dripped with saliva as he spoke. "It takes more than one to let him in, Dwayne." "Who's him? I thought I let you in." He crept over to me, rubbing his genitals and scratching his arsehole. He put his fingers up to my nose. "Smell them." I did as he said. They smelt like oil. "Now tell me who he is." "The one who chooses you. He wants you to be ready. I'm merely a messenger. Next comes the serious stuff." His bulging eye blinked at me. His eyelids squelched when he did. "What the hell are you talking about?" He vanished. Then I felt him kneeling behind me. He wrapped his hands around my throat and pulled me in close to him. I didn't even try and squirm. "It starts now," he said. The ground shook beneath us and there was a huge roar all around. The man with one eye laughed, cackling wildly as he leapt from the ground. When he landed, the floor cracked and a shining red light beamed from the splits. I smelt burning. The walls of my house rocked vigorously and the split in the floor suddenly burst open. I was sitting on the edge of a swirling vortex. The colours were amazing, a mixture of red, purple, yellow and greens. The force from the pool was strong. I could feel myself being ripped towards it, but still being bound by my handcuffs and chains, I felt I was safe. Then they snapped. I tumbled into the hole. The force I felt from the vortex was incredible. The colours were astounding. I admired them for a second, then I passed out. When I woke up, I was lying in a vast forest. It was snowing and there were deer sleeping next to me. The trees were frozen with ice and the snow was meters thick. But I wasn't cold. In my hands was a sword. I clenched it tightly before pushing myself up from the ground. There was no sign of human life and no tracks on the ground that gave me any idea in which direction to head. The snow that fell from the sky was thick and I could barely see what was right in front of me. Then I heard a loud howling rush up behind me. It came whizzing past me in a stream of brown and black. The deer next to me didn't even see it coming. A coyote had caught them at their most vulnerable. It was a female, I could tell. She sunk her teeth into the fawn and ragged it from side to side. The neck split open and then severed from the head. The blood on the snow was magnificent, felt like Christmas. When she had finished with the fawn, she began circling the parents. They tried to run but didn't stand a chance. The coyote lunged at the stag and savaged his ankle before taking a chunk out of his stomach. She pulled a string of intestine along the snow like a chew toy. The doe tried to nurse her partner, but she was ravished the minute she got close to him. A whole family killed by one being in an instant. I watched as the coyote fed on its prey, and as she fed, she began to morph. A woman grew from the ground and stood in front of me. She was naked and covered in gold jewellery. For some reason, I knew I didn't like her. "What do you want?" I said, raising my sword. "You need to let me in." "Why do people keep saying that?" "You're not ready." "Not ready for what?" She smiled. "Just fuck me." "No." I swung my sword. The blade cut through her neck, severing her in two. Blood spurted from her neck pipes and her water surrounded me. Her body stumbled to the floor. Her eyes were looking at me from the ground. She smiled. "Fancy a blowjob?" she cackled. I stared at the severed head. The lips were still moving. They looked like they'd suck a good dick. I picked up her head and held it by the hair. "Good boy. Can't say no to a little head." She opened her mouth. It was full of blood. She gargled it like it was cum, then spat it on my cock. I rubbed it in before wiping it all over her face. Then I placed her head on the floor and fucked her in the mouth. She should have been dead, but she still gagged. Every time I penetrated her throat, I could see the tip of my penis poking out of her neck. I spat on her and she loved it. I punched her and she loved it. I chopped her head off and fucked her skull and she loved it. At that moment, I suddenly felt very proud of myself and felt a strange entity enter my body, attaching itself to my soul. The whole time it had waited longingly, stained on my skin like a bad smell, but now it had found its way in. I had let it in. I dropped the head. It bounced from a tree trunk and disappeared into the snow. Full of adrenaline and power, I felt amazing. I started to run. Suddenly the ground began shifting beneath my feet and I was sucked into the ground. I saw nothing on my way down apart from death. I fell out the other side into a black swamp filled with moss and weeds. Then I was sucked under. A mouthful of water and I started to drown. Each breath was shorter than the last. My arms felt like stone and my legs were being pulled down by something. When I stared down into the abyss, the faces of dead children were clambering up my legs. Their skin was melting and they were screaming for help. I saw their past and what had killed them. Something inside of me wanted to survive and I managed to struggle to the surface. The sound of gushing. I was spinning in a whirlpool. I gasped and got another mouthful of water. The swirl took me under. I felt the water drop and gravity took over. I was falling through the air and the swamp was now just the rain pouring around me. A grey cloud I passed through showed me a face I'd never seen before. He told me he would see me again soon. I was falling for ages before I finally saw the ground. The roof of a house came at me like a speeding bullet. I went straight through it. The mattress broke my fall. I fell asleep. When I opened my eyes, I was looking at the inside of a police cell. That is when I really got scared. The sound of footsteps approaching my cell door made me vomit. Door swung open. "Come on, Mr. Hunter, the court will see you now." "What's going on?" "Don't play stupid, Mr. Hunter." "I don't know what you're talking about." They grabbed me and dragged me to the stand. I stopped asking questions. The courtroom was pitch black when I entered. Everything was silent and the only thing I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat. Then, "Hello, Mr. Hunter." The light sparked on. A chair spun round to face me. I was actually relieved when I saw the face of a judge, a bony skeleton covered in colourful fungus. The sockets in his skull were oozing with slime and his mouth was full of spiders. He laughed a horrendous laugh and a swarm of 8-legged freaks came clambering out of his mouth towards me. I didn't move. I just let them engulf me. I opened my mouth and they began to enter me. The judge cackled from his throne, banging his hammer wildly as he released his minions upon me. I could feel his insects crawling around inside of me, laying eggs in my intestines and feasting on my organs. They made me feel strong. The roof of the courthouse opened up above and a huge lightning bolt struck me dead. I fell to the floor and it struck me again. In the corner of my eye I could still see the judge's jaw cackling at me. He stood from his chair and advanced towards me. Every step he took made a sharp cracking sound. I stood from the ground. The strike had fueled me. "Eat me," he said. I nodded and ripped a handful of multicoloured fungi from his skull. They were warm and dripping with a green ooze. I ate the handful in one go. They tasted like pussy and death. My vision went blurry first, followed by my loss of balance. The floor looked comfortable, so I laid down. The darkness in my mind began racing with a blood and carnage so fierce that I felt the victim's excruciating pain, and I liked it. I tried not to smile when the people got killed, but I couldn't help it. It made me feel invincible, superhuman on hundreds of new, totally insane and fulfilling levels. I opened my eyes. I was on a beach. My hands were shaking. A surge of energy burst through my veins. My fingertips sparked with electricity. I flicked my hand and a ball of lightning blasted from my palm and skimmed across the ocean. The lightning had given me powers. I was now superhuman, and it was time to fight. A huge man-bat circled above me in the sky. I shot it with a ball of lightning but missed it by an inch. It swooped, dived and landed on the ground next to me. Its yellow eyes stared into my soul and burnt what was ever left. It shrieked, lunging towards me. A fang caught my neck and punctured a vein. I panicked and grabbed the beast's head. The electricity took care of the rest. Sparks of blue lightning shot from the body of the bat as it jittered about erratically in my grip, foaming from the mouth. The smoke rising from the body smelt like smoked rabbit. The bat had tried to eat me, so I thought it was only fair to pay back the gesture. My teeth sunk into the neck of the creature, sinking deep into the flesh. Mammoth blue sparks surrounded me, shooting from my face and the body of my prey. I felt like a god. I was a god. I snapped my fingers and teleported to a strange dimension. I was underwater. A mermaid swam past and blew me a kiss. I electrified the water and she flopped onto her back and rose to the surface. I swam after her. Nothing but stars around us. I was on a planet made from nothing but water. The mermaid was beautiful, so I had sex with her corpse. Then I started falling again. I landed in a bar stool. There was a woman next to me. The bartender bought me a whiskey on ice. "Hi," she said. "Hi. Ever wonder if it's possible to predict the future?" I looked at her face. She was incredible. Long black hair and sparkling blue eyes. Her lips bright red in a glossy lipstick. She was wearing a short t-shirt and a small skirt. Her legs were long and endless and her tits were stacked and firm looking. Why? You gonna tell me my future? Yeah, sure. I mean, why not? Go on then. Okay. She took a sip of her drink. Go to a festival called Spleen Fest. You'll meet a girl there. It will change your life. She kicked me off my stool and I landed in a pit of snakes. I looked at my skin and I was covered in hundreds of feeding ticks. Something grabbed my head and made me eat one. I screamed, struggling to move as the serpents constricted me. I was picked up and rolled over. The snakes started to make their way inside of me. One by one, the live creatures entered my body through my nose, mouth, arsehole and meatus. In my head, I imagined some slut gargling on my nutsack while I slapped her in the face. I closed my eyes. An arm grabbed me. Fiery breath ran down my neck. You're doing good, kid. I tried to turn around to face him, but he held me back. What do you want from me? It's not what I want from you. It's what you want from me. What the hell does that mean? Soon. You're so close. So close to what? He was gone. I was standing in a strip club. All the girls were walking corpses, their skin rotting and their guts exposed. One standing on a stage smiled at me and jumped down to talk to me. Hey, she said. Her jaw was hanging from her face by a thread. It wiggled when she talked. Yes, I said. I have a present for you. What is it? She pulled a rubber clown mask out from under her skirt. It was covered in her rotting flesh and vaginal fluids. I got a hard on. This belongs to you. That's not mine. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Trust me. She put the mask over my head. It smelt familiar and it fit perfectly, snug like a glove. As my breath heated up the rubber interior, I started to feel contently at home. Then I changed. The feeling of safety behind a mask absorbed me and I suddenly wanted to devote my entire life to murder and carnage. The naked man with one eye strolled over from the bar. He sat down and I sucked him off. He came in my mouth. It tasted like oil. I spat it at the corpse stripper, then raped her. The rest of the night was just drink, drugs, gambling and dead hookers. The party we had was fucking wild. Lots of bodies got dismembered. I passed out in a chair at a poker table full of demons after losing my soul in a game of blackjack. And that was the end of that night. When the madness ended, the sight of my apartment repulsed me. I panned around my living room, nothing but empty bottles, stacks of papers and scrunched up tissues. My hands were covered in blood, but it wasn't my blood. The chains I'd bound myself with were still tight and secure and my wrists were still wrapped in handcuffs. How the fuck is this possible? I thought, staring at the human wine dripping from my fingertips. I started to cry. I felt alone, broken and ashamed about what I'd done, what I'd become. I needed help, and I knew where to start. This had all begun on Guy Fawkes night when the guys and I went up to the graveyard. The girl in the white dress did something to me, and the people in the church knew what it was. I wasn't going to waste any more time feeling sorry for myself. I tried to break free. The radiator was tougher than the previous one in my bedroom, and it wouldn't budge. I had to dislocate my wrist to get out the cuffs. The key for the padlock for the chains was on the windowsill. I reached for it and swiped the key from the ledge. The key got stuck in the lock. When I finally managed to get free, I went to my kitchen and made myself a drink. The chair at my dining table spoke out to me. I sparked up a cigarette and enjoyed my whiskey. Every thought coursing through my mind was dedicated to stopping the foul beast that was butt-fucking me from the inside and finishing him like a knockout in Mortal Kombat. I took the bottle of whiskey and left the house. The train station was only 5 minutes from my apartment. I walked slowly. I was in no rush. When I arrived at Brighton Station, the train to Lewes pulled up at platform 3. I jumped the barriers and hopped on board. A woman and a kid were sitting at a booth. The kid was asleep and she looked bored, so I went over. I am selfish to others. I am at my highest during spring. I can often be mistaken as an accident. What am I? I said, sitting down next to her. She looked at me and smiled. I could see her thinking about it. Her brain was ticking away right in front of me. Tick, tick, Tick. Serial killer? No. She thought about it for a second before giving up. I don't know, tell me. Suicide. Bit morbid, isn't it? And serial killers aren't? Fair point. She turned and glanced at her kid. He was still sleeping. I'm Hannah. Dwayne. Where you headed, Dwayne? Lewis. You? New Haven. What's taking you to Lewis? Female? No, just visiting a friend. What about you? The husband getting home soon and you're rushing back to make the dinner? My husband left me. She glanced at her son. He left us. Sucks. You're beautiful and I bet your kid is a blast. You'll be fine, Hannah. I wouldn't worry about it though. You're still young, plenty of mistakes and great memories to be made. Give it a few months and you'll have forgotten all about what's-his-face. She giggled, covering her mouth before grabbing my knee and shaking it firmly. She kept her hand there. I leaned in to kiss her. She kissed me back. Her hand was running up my leg, her fingertips pressed up against my cock. I pulled her in close to me and began kissing her neck. She kept glancing to check on her kid. He was still asleep. I unzipped my jeans and pulled my cock out. I rubbed it a few times before angling it towards her. This is so naughty, she whispered. I pushed her head towards my cock. She took it down in one. Her hand was gripped around the bottom of my shaft, the other hand gently tickling my balls. As I pushed her head down further, I could feel her desire to gag, but she refused to do so. The sound would wake up her son. My cock was throbbing and I felt ready to explode. I'm gonna come. She jumped, pulling her lips away from my cock. Her mouth was full with frothy saliva, and a long strand of spit hung way past her chin. She looked at her son. Shush, you'll wake up Benny, she said, still stroking my cock. I'm almost done. She smiled and began tossing me off as fast as she could. I blew my load on her leg. A bit of my semen landed on her son. She wiped it off on her fingers and licked them clean. We'd stopped at my stop. I kissed her, wrote down my number and got off the train. It didn't take me long to get up to the church from the train station, but by the time I did, I was beginning to feel the presence again. He'd crept up on me like a virus. Every step I took closer to the church door made me feel even more insane than I already was. A strange feeling which was behind those doors was not exactly what I'd been expecting. The solid oak doors were heavy. After a few attempts I got them open. I saw a nun standing at the far end of the hall. She was knelt by the cross praying and hadn't heard me come in. I saw my chance and snuck up behind her. I yanked on her veil and she tumbled back. She screamed when she looked at me. I climbed on top of her. What the hell did that girl do to me? I shouted. I wrapped my hands around her neck. She started to cry. Answer me, you fucking bitch. That poor girl did nothing to you. Stop fucking lying, you cow. What did she do to me? You're insane. Where are the people in the black hoods? I don't know what you're talking about. My grip round her neck tightened. As I stared into her eyes, I could see she was telling the truth. I didn't care. Tell me what you know. I was rabid, nothing but rage and hatred boiling inside of me. Okay, you came here with a girl. You kidnapped her. I tried to talk to you, calm you down, but you punched me and tied me up. You kept mumbling about spilling the blood of a virgin. You raped her on the floor over there, she pointed towards the confession booths. Then you drenched her in gasoline and burnt her alive. I never saw your face, you were hidden behind a mask. You're lying. No, you're sick, you need help. We have programs for like you, we could try and help you. No! I punched her in the face. She screamed, her nose erupted in blood. I punched her again and ripped her robes from her body. She had a nice physique for how old she was, and her pussy had been shaven. Not bad, babe. Not bad at all. I began laughing uncontrollably as I forced my cock into her pussy. She had passed out from the punches so she didn't struggle. I raped her, then came in her mouth. She woke up for a second and looked at me. You animal, you'll burn in hell for this. Suddenly I heard a voice. It was a different voice from the others. He sounded strong, powerful and respected. Don't worry about burning in hell, kid. You are hell, he said. I kicked the nun in the head. You are Satan, he whispered. She saw the look in my eyes and knew I was going to kill her. She started to pray. I drowned her in the holy water, then buried her body in the cemetery. On the way home, I finally realised what I'd become, what I'd always been. A god. Satan and I shared a body, and together we could take over the world. I stopped off at a shop near my apartment and bought a few beers and a bottle of Jack Daniels. While I was inside, I met a woman and got her number. Her name was Sammy. We liked the same beer. When I got home, I decided on crashing in front of the TV for a few hours. Before I even switched it on, the phone rang. I picked it up. It was my editor, Greg Finland at CalMag. "Chucky, I've got an assignment for you." Greg didn't know my real name. In fact, no one in the industry did. "What is it?" "I need you to cover Spleenfest. The guy who was meant to do it got hit by a truck. Just my luck, eh? I got your tickets sorted. It's an easy gig. 10,000 words should do it." "When's the gig?" "Today. You'll be staying at the festival for the entire duration. 3 days. We need total coverage. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Good. I'll have a car pick you up in half an hour." "Fine." I hung up. I was happy for the call. I felt I needed some time away. 13. I was due to leave for the festival at 4:30. It was 4:15 p.m. when Michelle unexpectedly showed up at my door. She was crying. A guy she'd been seeing had just cut it off with her. The only reason she'd come round to see me was for revenge sex. I told her I was in a hurry, but she chose to ignore me and came inside anyway. She sat down in the living room. Luckily, she was too distraught to notice the chains and handcuffs still attached to my radiator. I poured a glass of whiskey and sat down on the sofa next to her. She put her arm around me and buried her head in my crotch. I got hard. Her hand reached for my balls. "Michelle, I really don't have time. My driver will be here to pick me up in 10 minutes. She looked up at me and batted her eyelashes. Her blue eyes twinkled brightly as she licked her lips. 10 minutes is more than enough time for me to suck the cum out of you, babe." She shoved my dick into her mouth and played with herself. Her face started to dissolve. Her skin was dripping from her face in blobs of fleshy mush, rolling down and off her skull, smothering my crotch in a foul-smelling gloop. She squished the fleshy substance with the palm of her hand and ruffled it in my pubic hair. She gagged. Huge horns grew from her head and tentacles sprouted from her back. The slithering limbs wiggled manically, lunging towards me like venomous snakes. Her hands were wrinkled and bony. I watched in horror as her nails began to grow from her fingertips and started coiling around me. I screamed, shoving off me and staggering to my feet. She fell back and cracked her head on the corner of my coffee table. The nightmare stopped, but a new one begun. Michelle wasn't moving and her face had started to turn blue. I checked her pulse. She was dead. I panicked. The demon inside of me told me to get rid of the body. I knew I didn't have enough time to dispose of the corpse properly, so as fast as I could, I hacked off her limbs and stuffed the pieces into a large suitcase. When my driver arrived, I had him take it out to the car. My plan was to dump it somewhere along the way, but I got so drunk in the car that I completely forgot, and before I knew it, I was walking into a festival full of thousands of people, carrying a suitcase containing the bloody remains of a dead female friend of mine. When I entered through the gates, I was greeted by Marty Stallone, the festival's organizer and head director. "Chucky Delgado from Cow Magazine, yes?" he asked, reaching out to shake my hand. My hands were full, so I nodded. "Great, we got you a trailer and crew camping and 2 unlimited backstage passes, so you'll have total access." 2 passes? "Yeah, sure, in case you meet a female friend." "Okay." "James will take you to your trailer, and if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. We're happy to assist you with whatever you need." "Then have someone bring up a few bottles of Jack Daniels and a 12-packet of cigarettes, yeah?" "No problem." A skinny, pale-faced, spotty teenager lurched behind him. He went to reach for my suitcase, but I snatched it away. I scared him. No, boy, just show me my trailer," I said. My accommodation was fine. A small caravan equipped with a double bed, kitchen area, dining booth, TV and video cassette player, shower, toilet and a high-powered ceiling fan. I'd been placed on the edge of the festival, away from the general punters, so I had pretty much a whole camping plot to myself. There was a note on the table inside. It was from Marty. He wrote to remind me that Pantera would be playing at 8 o'clock on the main stage. They were one of the head attractions, and any journalist who knows anything knows that you can't have an article without a main event, and the festival itself just would not do, not when there were thousands of other big and well-known festivals to compete with. The band had flown in from America, and it was going to be their last ever tour of the UK. Being a big fan myself, especially of the lead guitarist Dimebag, I hadn't forgotten. My editor had faxed me over a copy of the festival's lineup after he'd phoned, and when I saw Pantera right there at the top, I couldn't quite believe I'd managed to forget about it myself. But now it had been brought to my attention, I wouldn't be forgetting again. I suppose I did have a lot on my mind at the time. I spent the first hour after my arrival sat at the kitchen table drinking whiskey and staring at Michelle's hacked up body in my suitcase. I felt bad. I really did. She was my friend and I didn't mean to kill her, but the devil made me do it. You don't argue with the devil. Plus, I knew he'd look after me if I was loyal. I apologised to her, picking up her severed head and kissing her forehead. Her blood tasted sweet, like honey glazed pork. I really am sorry, Michelle. I took another sip of whiskey, then placed her head back in the suitcase and zipped it up. My watch said 7 p.m. I had an hour to get ready for the concert. I didn't need an hour, but I took my time anyway. When I finally left, I headed straight to a bar near the main stage. There was a big, uncoordinated queue. I didn't have time to wait in line, so I gathered a few glasses from a table and began making my way through to the front of the bar. Sorry people, just need to get these glasses to the bar, we're running dry, I said. No one questioned me, they just moved out the way. When I got to the bar and put the glasses down, the bar girl smiled at me. Here are those glasses you asked for, boss, I said, ending with a flirtatious wink. She shook her head playfully whilst removing the glasses from the bar. Then she looked at me and smiled. She was beautiful, crisp, perfect features, dazzling green eyes and dark red hair. I've finished my shift now anyway. Couldn't grab us a whiskey and ice, could you? Ha! You're quite something, aren't you? She said. Just an angel in disguise. Sure, more like Satan, I'm guessing. I'm shocked that you think that of me. You try and do something nice for someone and they throw it back in your face. You know you're on planet Earth, right? This place seems to inhabit nothing but total scum and filthy perverts. No, I thought I was in Narnia. You got to be kidding if you're telling me this place is Earth. You know, on the way here I saw a guy carrying a suitcase full of body parts. And last week I saw a naked woman morph into a coyote. I didn't smile. I wanted to toy with her emotions. I saw what I'd said just processing in her brain. She looked scared. Then she laughed awkwardly. You're weird. Not as weird as some. She made my drink. I didn't even have to pay. Employees drink for free, she said. I gave her a tip anyway for the gesture. I'd have stayed longer and tried my luck with her, but the bar was heaving and she was one of the only 2 people manning it. Maybe I'll go back later, I thought. After that, I headed backstage and watched Pantera perform from the best seats in the house. It was an amazing feeling, standing on stage where one of your all-time favourite bands performs live in front of you for what is probably their last ever UK performance. I was getting paid to experience something most people in the world would never get to experience. It felt amazing. When they finished performing, they passed me on their way to their dressing rooms. Dimebag stopped me in the hall. Got a light? Sure. I handed him my lighter. He lit a cigarette and offered it back to me. Keep it, I said. Thanks. He lifted a bottle of Jack Daniels up in his hand and glanced at it, then glanced at me. Here. He handed me the bottle. Thanks. Don't mention it. Thanks for the light. I'll see you around. He turned and left. When he was gone, I realised that I should have probably asked him for a quick interview. It would have done my reputation a world of good, although I'd always be against the idea. I had too much respect for the guy to pester him right after a show. Plus, I didn't mind. The whiskey itself was more than I could ever ask for. I cracked it open and took a swig before heading back out onto the grounds of the festival. After a couple of hours of wandering around and checking out what the festival had to offer, I settled in one of the smaller tents. There was a new band playing called Tapez. I hadn't heard of them, but there was a girl on the dance floor that I just couldn't keep my eyes off. I felt like I knew her, but I didn't know why. She was tall, sexy with long black hair, facial piercings and tattoos. Her eyes were mesmerizing, a crystal ocean blue. They sparkled like suns under the stage lights. I was hooked. I sat and watched from afar as she danced to the band. I got hard. A sudden announcement from the lead singer stated that a mosh pit was about to commence. I thought the girl would run for it. She didn't. When the song hit its peak, she was swinging, kicking and shoving better than half of the males on the dance floor. I saw her smack a guy in the face with a closed fist before kneeing another individual in the balls. The whole time, she smiled and beamed with excitement. She was perfect, and my demon loved her. When the band finished playing, I tried to go over and speak to her. A bit of advice: if you like someone, then don't waste your time thinking. Always tell a person how you feel as soon as you feel it yourself. I say this because the lead guitarist from the band snatched her before I even had a chance to introduce myself. She spotted me though, and smiled. They went backstage. She looked back at me again, so I went after them. I managed to lose them in a corridor of crowded people. I searched around for a few minutes before giving up. It was on the way back out to the grounds when I heard shouting. A couple were arguing, so I decided to go have a look. They were stood in a doorway. I stayed around the corner. You're a fucking whore, Lacey. You need to sort your shit out and grow the fuck up. How can you even say that when you're the one who cheated on me? You know how I feel about stuff like that. I'd never cheat on you, you dick. Her voice was sexy. She had a Russian accent. Well, maybe if you weren't so shit in bed. She slapped him and he punched her back. Almost lost it and went over and slit his throat. I refrained from doing so. You're such a fucking arsehole, Jonas. I hate you. Well then why don't you just fuck off, you stupid little tramp. He pushed her and she fell. I did nothing. Stupid bitch. I heard him step over and walk in my direction. When he turned the corner, I made it look like I'd just bumped into him. Instantly I realised he was the guitarist from the band. He grunted at me. Yo, guy, you happen to check out that band Tapez? I said, sounding like a fan. He nodded and smiled at me. Sure, what about 'em? Total wank. I just saw them play, thought I was watching a string of animals being killed. He looked hurt and walked away. When I turned the corner, Lacey was stood there staring at me, the girl on the dance floor. I fell in love with her immediately. I knew then I would never let her go, and no matter what, under any circumstances would I let anything happen to her. We stared into each other's eyes, our breaths synced, so did our heartbeats. Do I know you? She asked. We were still locked into each other's eyes. I was thinking the same thing, I said. I think I had a dream about you. And then it hit me. She was the girl from my dream. So did I. That's weird, isn't it? Yeah. But do you believe in fate? I'm not sure. Maybe. Or not really. I'm not sure. I don't like the idea of having no control over my life. Having everything planned out, you know. Why? Do you? Sure. I mean, the idea of a soulmate doesn't sound too bad. Do you not agree? She smiled. Yeah, I guess you're right. I'm Dwayne, by the way. I offered my hand. She shook it. Nice to meet you, Dwayne. I'm Lacey. Yeah, I know. Sorry, I overheard you and your boyfriend arguing. Ex-boyfriend. I smiled. You fancy getting a drink? She said. I looked down at the bottle of Jack Daniels in my hand. Sure, but how about we drink this bottle of Jack that Dimebag gave me? I showed her the bottle. She snatched it from my hands. Her face lit up. She shrieked. You met Dimebag? Yeah, after the show he asked me for a lighter. That's amazing. Well, if it's from Dimebag, how can I say no? You'd just say no. Well, I say yes. She grabbed my hand tightly and held the bottle of liquor close to her chest. Fancy a few drinks in my trailer? Then maybe take a little stroll around the festival? There's a band I've wanted to see, I said. Yeah, that sounds nice actually. Which band? There's some new underground band called Six-Legged Carcass. I love that band. Really? Surprised you've heard of them. Yeah, well, I've been on the circuit for a while. What do you mean? Nothing. It's just that I've been hanging around with the crowd for a while now, and you get to go to a few gigs when you're travelling around with the band, that's all. I saw Six Legged Carcass at Stabfest last year. Amazing concert. And this year at Sneezepool, just as good, although their lead guitarist was stuck in the US at a court hearing and couldn't make it. Still a hell of a show though. And I definitely don't mind seeing them again. Anyway, enough, I'm thirsty. Should we go back to your trailer for those drinks? Sure. It was hot that night. The sun had been beaming down on my trailer all day, and inside felt like standing in the pits of hell. Michelle's body had been baking in my suitcase for only a few hours, and already the heat was causing a fierce stench to creep from the seams. I sprayed a whole can of air freshener to try and smother the smell, but it was no use. The smell of death was prevalent. I told Lacey that a family of rats had crawled under the floor and died. Strangely, she didn't seem the slightest bit curious, and the smell didn't seem to bother her at all. In fact, I think it made her kind of horny. We hadn't been in my room for more than 5 minutes when she pushed me onto the bed and climbed on top of me. She stared into my eyes and shed a look that made a dead heart start beating. I took her hand and held it up to my face. Her touch was warm and soothing. She kissed my forehead before rolling off of me and heading over to the dinner booth. She swiped the bottle of Jack from the wooden surface and took a sip. I feel like I've known you forever, she said, walking back towards the bed. Satan spoke to me. He told me to let her in. I feel the same way. It's crazy, isn't it? And I know this may sound weird, and I know we've only just met, yet I still think you're my soulmate. She started to cry. Do you mean that? Yes, I do. That's what I thought when I saw you too. Then what's the problem? Fuck Jonas, I said, kicking out my feet and booting my suitcase onto the floor. It fell open. Jesus Christ, what the hell is that? Lacey said, staring at the bloody limbs on the trailer floor. Shit. It's not what it looks like. It was an accident. She said nothing. She was staring at the chopped up pieces, her face showing all types of different emotions. I thought she was going to cry, but then she started smiling. It's so pretty, she said. Satan said, I told you so, as I watched Lacey pick up Michelle's head and kiss her on the lips. I thought I was the only one, she said. Me too. She put Michelle's head back on the floor and sat back on the bed. She still looked unhappy. What's up? Nothing. I knew something was wrong. Shut up. I know there's something wrong, so just tell me. Don't play silly games, yeah? She turned to me and cracked a smile. I do love a dominant man. I'm all you'll ever need, babe. And you to me. Now tell me what's wrong. It's Jonas, the guitarist. Yeah? What about him? Well, it's just he has my bag. So get a new bag. No, you don't understand. I need this bag. I didn't even ask what was in the bag. I didn't care. Whatever Lucy wanted, I was going to give her. Okay, so we'll get it back. You'd do that for me? Of course, you're my soulmate, remember? Thank you, baby. You're the best. She hugged me tightly before climbing on my chest and kissing my neck. No problem. I'll go see him tonight. Can I come? You want to come? Sure. Yeah, I don't see why not. I love you, Dwayne. I love you too, Lacey. I want to show you how much I love you. She pulled her top off and shoved her tits in my face before kissing my neck and moving down my stomach and towards my crotch. She grabbed my cock in her hand and licked the tip gently. Romance and fire with Dwayne and Lacey, she said. I couldn't believe what was happening. I'd spent my whole life avoiding commitment, and suddenly I was ready to dive into a relationship with a total stranger that I'd only just met. But it didn't matter. I didn't care. I loved this girl and wanted the whole world to know. I would cherish her forever, love and protect her, and together we would be unstoppable. Dwayne and Lacey against the world, till the end of time, leaving nothing but a trail of blood, guts, sex and crime behind us. I knew then we would be famous, infamous, and feared among men. One day, I even believed they would write a book about us. 14. The sex I had with Lacey was the best I'd ever had, and I'd slept with probably, or might have been anyway, over 1,000 women up until that point, but still, none compared to Lacey. She even said the same thing about me, although you never can be too sure if a female truly means what she says to you. They like to be kind, until they feel that they want to treat you like shit. This usually evolves over time. First it's kisses and cuddles, then it's fuck you and I hate you, until someone cheats on someone. Although Lacey didn't strike me as the sort of person who worried much about hurting people's feelings, or to beat around the bush for that matter, and there certainly wasn't anything which I'd done to make her hate me or feel unwanted in any way. After we fucked, she helped me get Michelle back into the suitcase and get the blood off the trailer floor. She said she wanted to help. Then she said she enjoyed it. Apparently her favourite part was soaking up the blood with a white tea towel. She said she liked the way even inanimate objects look dead when they're smothered in blood. She was amazing. I couldn't believe my luck. I'd settled with the devil and the other demons living inside of me. I'd become a god amongst men, and now I'd met the goddess that would stand by me through all of it, and even get involved herself along the way. I could see the lust for blood in her eyes a mile away, and I knew she was hungry. I took it upon myself to lead this girl like the devil had led me. Already she was strong, but I would help her become stronger. First things first though, of course. We still had the little issue of Slutpuss's guitarist, Jonas. Not to worry, I thought. I can slit his throat while Lacey cuts his dick off. Then we can fuck in his blood. It will be a good experience for Lacey, and I think she'll enjoy it. It was midnight when we decided it was time to head out and find Jonas. Lacey asked me if we could sit down for 5 more minutes and have a few more drinks before heading out. I told her that we should leave, as looking for an individual in a crowded festival would be extremely difficult and very time-consuming. She said she already knew where he'd be. She was sat at the table with her legs open. I could see up her skirt and she wasn't wearing any knickers. I got hard. She caught me staring and smiled as she nibbled on her nail. She took a drag on her cigarette and blew the smoke in my face. The girl had me totally under her spell, so much so that I dropped to my knees and slipped my head under her dress. I rolled my tongue across her clit, stroking the lips of her pussy with my fingers. I was in love, and it felt amazing. When she came in my face, I came as well. She didn't even have to touch me. She really was a goddess. When we left the trailer, the grounds of the festival were still heaving with life. Every stage blaring with heavy metal or punk rock and surrounded by half-naked, cheering, sweaty teens. The inhabitants of the spleen had succumbed to a drunken folly, absorbed entirely by their own self-indulgence. For a few hours, for once in their miserable, pitiful existence, they were aloof, oblivious and estranged from the true insignificance they felt during their normal 9-to-5s. But come Monday, the flight of normality will return, and they'll fall back into the general swing of things, felching the cream from the giant arsehole that enslaves them. We made our way through the swarm, brushing shoulders with shirtless goths, their body odour so repugnant that it left a bitter stain in the roof of your mouth. We were heading for the crew vehicle camp. Lacey had told me that her bag was in Jonas's van, where he'd most likely be himself, drinking with his band or fucking some promiscuous groupie. It didn't take us long before we headed up the muddy path towards crew camping. The field suddenly seeming hushed, more homely, as artists and crew sat around blazing bin fires, listening to rock music at a reasonable volume, drinking whiskey and sat talking to some of the most beautiful girls I'd ever seen. None of them compared to Lacey, of course. "Where's his van?" I said. "Not far. I know where I'm going. Just follow me." "Okay." "What are you going to do if Jonas is there?" "You mean, what will we do?" I smiled at her. She smiled back at me before kissing me on the cheek. "Yeah, I mean, what will we do?" "Ask him for the bag politely, of course. If he doesn't give it to us, we'll kill him, and anyone else who tries to stop us. And if he does give it to us, we'll kill him anyway. But who knows, maybe we'll spare some of the others. I don't know yet, he hasn't told me." "Do we really have to kill him, if he gives me my bag? And who hasn't told you what yet?" "Never mind. And we don't have to kill him, but..." It'd be fun, don't you think? Yeah, it would be fun. So, no problems then? No, no problems. I just like to keep things organised, that's all. Well, you can be my personal planner then, because I'm horribly unarranged. She laughed before turning down a row of parked cars. That's Jonas's van at the end. She pointed at a large blue silver LGV. That's more of a bus than a van. Same thing, 4 wheels, engine, bigger than a car. It's a bus. Yeah, so, same thing. No, not same thing. Whatever, does it even matter? Not really, no. So, we're having this conversation, why? I'm just saying it was a bus, not a van. Okay. When we reached the truck, we could hear the sound of a girl moaning coming from inside, and the deep pants of a male breath grunting below her. That fucking little shit, I knew he'd be sticking his dick in some tramp. Let's kill the pair of them, Dwayne, Lacey said. I wouldn't have it any other way, darling. We kissed passionately before creeping silently round the back of the vehicle. There was a window open. I gave Lacey a boost and she climbed inside. I went in after her. When my feet hit the floor, I could barely believe what I was looking at. The inside of the bus was incredible, equipped with personal PA system, 2 furnished bars, a hot tub, flat screen TVs, sofas, armchairs and futons. We'd entered through the hall window. I could hear the sound of Jonas fucking in the room next to me. There was a knife in my pocket. I didn't know how it got there. Where's your bag? In there, she said, pointing at the bedroom door in which Jonas was violating her trust behind once again. You ready, Lacey? I asked, slipping the blade from my pocket and holding it up beside my face. I'm ready, Dwayne. I kicked the door, took it off the hinges and sent it flying across the room. It took Jonas and his whore a while to notice. The initial seconds that we entered, they continued fucking obliviously. Trick or treat, I shouted. My face was covered by a mask. So was Lacey's. I'd only just noticed. Jonas jumped, tumbling from the girl and onto the bedroom floor. The naked blonde was left sprawled out on the bed and cuffed to the bedposts. She screamed, then started to cry. Shut the fuck up, bitch. Lacey, where's your bag? Lacey, Jonas stuttered. What the hell are you doing? He tried to stand from the floor, but I kicked him in the face. He fell back and spat out a load of teeth onto a white fur rug. Hi, Jonas. How are you? Lacey said playfully. The girl on the bed was still screaming and crying. I couldn't stand it. I stabbed her in the stomach and pulled out her intestines. Lacey shrieked with joy and snatched the knife from my hand. She stabbed the girl in the face, then in the cunt, before slicing off her nipples. Jonas was staring in horror, clutching his face and begging us to stop. Fucking stop, please, you're sick, both of you, he screamed. I didn't waste any more time. He would attract attention if he kept grovelling. I charged at him and stamped on his crotch. He squealed. I kicked him again. Cut his dick off, Dwayne. You want me to cut his dick off? Really? I was surprised. She batted her eyelashes and smiled promiscuously. Please, Dwayne, for me, baby? I gazed down at Jonas. He shook his head from side to side, crying hysterically, his eyes full of fear and desperation. I almost felt sorry for him. But then he came to me. His face appeared in front of me, the one who is too horrific to describe. The devil told me to serve my princess, and I knew then what I had to do. Sorry, Jonas, I said, shrugging my shoulders and turning to Lacey. She nodded. No, please, don't do this, he wept. Lacey, I'm sorry. She said nothing. Sorry, pal. What the lady wants, the lady gets. Thank you, honey bunny. I love you. I love you too, princess. I pinched the tip of Jonas's cock and stretched it out from between his legs. He tried to squirm, but Lacey held him down. Like a female would, I teased him first, stroking the blade along his cock, poking it gently into his skin. He was crying hysterically. Lacey pushed his eyes into his skull with her thumb. I stuffed his boxer shorts into his mouth so he couldn't scream. Here it comes, Jonas. Brace yourself. His cock severed off in one clean swoop. The track pumped blood from the limb like a garden hose. He passed out instantly. I slit his throat to make sure he was dead. What are we going to do with the bodies? Lacey asked as she strolled over to the other side of the room and picked up a big black satchel from off the dressing table. That your bag? She smiled at me. Yep. Good. We'll throw a burning rag in the fuel tank. Blow this place to pieces. The fire should destroy any evidence we leave behind. You're amazing, you know that, don't you, Dwayne? Just here to make you happy. I want to make you happy. She took her top off and strutted over to me, rubbing her tits and licking her lips. Let me see that cock. I whipped it out and started jerking off. She got on her knees and kissed the tip, and took it all in her mouth. After she was done playing with me, we fucked on the corpse of Jonas's hussy. We both came in her face. When we left, I set fire to an oily rag and stuffed it in the tank. We were long gone before we saw the explosion in the distance behind us. We kissed under the fireworks. Marty Stallone, the festival director, didn't even shut the festival down. They just evacuated a certain area. The incident went down with the police as being accidental, although I wasn't totally sure they were all that convinced. I think the authorities were more worried about causing a riot, so they felt it easier to leak to the public as no foul play expected. When we got back to the trailer, we took the suitcase full of Michelle's limbs and buried it 6 feet deep in the ground, out in the middle of the woods that stretched far behind the pitch. 15. After our confrontation with Jonas, Lacey and I managed to get through the festival's remaining duration without a single incident. We saw Six-Legged Carcass perform as planned, fucked under the stars outside my trailer, and drank our weight in liquor several times over. By then, we had conformed totally to the festival way of life. I'd even managed to get my article finished by the second night, being that Pantera and Six-Legged Carcass, along with the tragic death of a band member and a young woman, was enough to keep the readers reading. On the last night, Lacey and I got talking about what we were going to do after the spleen was over. She lived in Bristol, I lived in Brighton. Come back with me, I said, wrapping my arms around her and kissing her gently on the cheek. You want me to come to Brighton with you? Yeah, sure, I mean, why not? I don't know. Then say you'll come. She hesitated, pulling herself away from me and standing from the bed. I could see in her eyes there was something she wanted to tell me. What is it? I said. It's just... There's something I need to tell you, Dwayne. My heart dropped. I knew there was something seriously wrong. I'd said that line more times than I'd cared to remember, and every time I'd said it, I'd used it as a breaker for bad news. It's about the bag. My stomach settled, and I let out a sigh of relief. What about the bag? It's full of cocaine. How much cocaine? 20 ounces. At that moment, as all I could see were pound signs flashing in front of me like police headlights. 20 ounces would make us rich. Why didn't you tell me this before? I don't know, I didn't know how you'd react. You found a chopped up female in my suitcase and you didn't know how I'd react? I know, I'm stupid, sorry. I just thought maybe you'd think I was using you. You're not, are you? No, of course not, Dwayne. I love you forever and ever. And ever and ever? Yeah, till the end of time. Okay. So we shift this coat. It's not a problem. Don't worry about it. We'll just take it back to Brighton, sit on it a couple of days while I find potential buyers. Once we've got rid, we'll use the money to take off somewhere. Las Vegas, she shrieked. Sure, why not? I like to think I know my way around a blackjack table. It's the city where the demon's children play, you know that? Then it's where we shall frolic and dance also, my sweet. Sure, why not? I like to think I know my way around a blackjack table. It's the city where the demon's children play, you know that? Then it's where we shall frolic and dance also, my sweet. On the train back to Brighton, Lacey fell asleep on my lap. I decided on using the time to proofread my article. I was about halfway through when something on the train caught my eye. It was crouched in between the seats. I could hear it eating something. The rest of the carriage was empty, and there appeared to be no other forms of life in sight. Then, long tentacles slithered over the headrest towards me. I wanted to run, but didn't want to disturb Lacey. The floor started to turn into a rancid muck, squelching at my feet as I tried to pull them out. A pair of slimy tentacles slithered up our seats and crawled around Lacey before making their way into her cunt and mouth. She started to moan, Her eyes flickered and her body tensed up. She was enjoying it. Another limb snuck up from under her seat and entered through the rectum. She squealed before letting out a sigh of relief. She started to smile, her hands wrapped around the snake like a cock, feeding it into her mouth. I took my dick out and started to jerk off. I was terrified, yet I just couldn't help myself. The naked man with one eye appeared at the end of the coach. He stood smiling, his clustered teeth and razor-sharp fangs sprawled out in sheer happiness. Behind him was the clown with an axe. He was covered in blood and waving at me. They said they had a present for me. When I asked what it was, I saw Michelle's corpse crawl out from under my seat. She'd been stitched together, but not all that well. Her head was hanging off by a thread. She took my cock in her cold, bloody hands and jammed it into her windpipe. I fucked her neck and came in her throat, and when I did, I suddenly noticed I was sitting in a carriage full of people. Lacey was still asleep next to me. My hands were down my pants and covered up by a newspaper. The passengers were staring at me. I picked up the paper and started reading, and after a couple of seconds, the passengers went back to forgetting that I even existed. The newspaper was a couple of days old. I got about reading a string of murders that had taken place in Brighton. Apparently a woman and her dog were mutilated in Preston Park. A homeless man stabbed to death, then laid on live train tracks and left to fry. They suspected the killer was some kind of cannibal due to the fact that the victims both had chunks torn out of their flesh. I'd like to meet this man, I thought. We could be good friends. I wonder if he's got a girlfriend. We could double date. When we finally arrived back at my apartment, Lacey headed straight for the toilet while I called the burger shop down the road and ordered us dinner. When the delivery boy arrived, I told him to come inside and wait in the hall while I grabbed some dosh from upstairs. As I turned to leave, Lacey snuck up behind him and wrapped a belt round his neck. Then I stabbed him in the gut with a kitchen knife. When he was dead, I cut the skin from his face and put it over my head. After that, we fucked in front of the television, using the pizza boy's blood for lubrication and my porn collection as added stimulant, but not that we needed it. When we were all out of folly and ready to time out, I threw the body of my victim in the bathtub and dissolved him in acid. When I drained the tub, I collected the hair and fingernails and threw them in the trash. The teeth I kept to make a necklace out of. The next morning, when Lacey and I arose from our night's sleep, the phone rang. I picked it up. It was Kingsley. "What the fuck, Dwayne? Where the hell have you been? I've been trying to get hold of you for days." "What's the problem?" I guessed he was calling about Michelle. "The police came round to my house. They're looking for you. They said they've tried your apartment, but you weren't there. You're in deep shit, mate." "Why? What did they say?" "They want to talk to you about the murders." "What murders?" "The ones which happened recently. You know, the massacre we spoke about. The one that took place on a bus. And the more recent murders. The woman in the park with her dog. The homeless guy. Surely you've heard something about all this." "Not a thing. But thanks for calling." "What's going on, Dwayne? You didn't kill those people, did you?" "No, of course not. I haven't even been in Brighton. I'm hurt you'd even ask me." "Sorry, just a bit shook up, you know. I've been trying to call you for days. Where have you been?" "I was doing a piece on a festival." "Right. Michelle didn't go with you by any chance?" "No, but I saw her before I left." "Did she say anything to you? We haven't heard from her in days." "Yeah, she did. She'd just split with some guy she'd been seeing. Came to tell me that she was taking off. Headed up to London to meet some new guy that she'd met at a club last week. I wouldn't worry, Kingsley. She's probably still up there latched onto the poor sap's wallet. You know what she's like." "Okay, I suppose you're right." "I'm always right, Kingsley. Now, what are you doing?" "I'm at home. About to go to the pub and meet Naomi." "Scrap that. Meet me at McDonald's on London Road in 15 minutes. Drive your car and park it round the corner." "Why McDonald's?" "Does it matter? Look, I just need your help, okay?" He wasn't sure. "Please, Kingsley, I really need a friend right about now." Okay. Yeah, sure, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Remember your car." "Yeah, I will." He hung up. What was that all about? Lacey asked. The police are looking for me. They've been here already, so no doubt they'll be back. Shit. You should probably head back to Bristol. I don't want you getting mixed up in all this. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm staying with you. You really want to stay even though it could get thrown in prison or killed? That won't happen as long as we're together. We'll take a flight, travel to Europe and get a plane to Vegas. Kill anything that gets in our way? Exactly. We'll be fine, Dwayne. And look, I even have these. She climbed out of bed, strolled to my cabinet and pulled the black bag filled with coke from the closet. She rummaged to the bottom before pulling out a shotgun, followed by a revolver and a magnum. No one will mess with us. She chucked me the shotgun. Fuck, I love you so much. I love you too, babe. We should probably go though. Police could turn up any second. I didn't live far from McDonald's, so we walked, rather than getting a cab. Fresh air did me good. All the stress I'd been under had been making me feel sluggish and incoherent. But by the time I reached the restaurant, I felt right as rain. Kingsley hadn't arrived yet, so I ordered a Big Mac with cheese for myself and a Coke and fries for Lacey. Sat down at the back and ate our food quietly. By the time we'd finished our meal, Kingsley still hadn't arrived. Where the hell is your friend? I don't know. He should be here by now. I'm bored. Well, there's not much I can do about that right now. Why not? We could rob this place. I'm sure they got plenty of money in those tills. I thought about it, and it wasn't a bad idea. We needed the money if we were going to skip town. Fuck it, why not, eh? That's the spirit. She passed me the revolver under the table and kept the magnum for herself. We whack out the shotgun if things got too serious. On the count of 3, I started. 1, 2, 3. Lacey jumped from her seat and ran into the middle of the crowded restaurant. I followed her. She climbed on the table and removed the customer's food with her feet. The whole place was quiet. Everyone was staring at us. Now listen up, you fucking vermin. No one move. If you move, I'll put a bullet in your head so fucking quickly no one else will even notice. Now everyone empty your pockets, put your handbags on the table. When my friend here comes round to your table, you hand out whatever you've got. Do you understand me? I want everything and anything. She turned to me. Make a start on the tables. I'll go empty the tills. Jumping from the table, she stormed past me and towards the cashiers. She shot all 3 of them dead in cold blood, then began to empty the tills into McDonald's takeout bags. Her passion was electric. I stood, frozen in awe as I gazed at her beauty. She turned and shouted, "What the hell are you doing standing there? Yeah, move on and take these people's shit." Right, yeah, sorry. I shuffled round the tables and robbed each customer individually. One person put up a fight, so I killed him on the spot. It didn't take me long to whip round the entire restaurant. Everyone was so scared that they were pretty much throwing their stuff at me. Then Kingsley arrived. He came waltzing in, completely oblivious at first to the mayhem that he had stumbled upon. Then he saw the cashier's brains splattered all over the counter. He went pale and started to well up with tears. I pointed the gun at him. He froze. "Move and I'll blow your brains all over the floor." "What are you doing, Dwayne? I'm your friend." Lacey ran back from the counters. "We have to go, now." I grabbed Kingsley and shoved the gun into his back. "Take us to your car. You're going to drive us out of Brighton." "You got to be crazy, mate. The police are looking for you everywhere." Lacey kicked him in the balls. He screamed and fell to the floor. I picked him back up and put the gun to his head. "Take us to the car now or I'll kill you. It's pretty simple, friend." "Okay, Jesus Christ, I'll drive you out of town. Just don't shoot me, alright?" As soon as you told him I won't have to. When we got to the car, I sat in the passenger seat and adjusted the backrest like I always did. Lacey guided Kingsley into the driver's seat, pointing her gun into the back of his head. He was shaking like a leaf caught in an ocean storm. Lacey got in the passenger seat and sat behind him. She pulled out a makeup mirror and stared into it. Kingsley was staring blankly out the window. His hands were rested on the steering wheel, and I could see him praying, silently begging for his life. "Drive." I pointed my gun down towards Kingsley's crotch. He took a glance at the weapon and wept harder. "What the fuck? Why are you doing this, Dwayne? We're friends. What's happened?" It was true. We'd been best buddies for yonks. Spent many great years fishing for strange and drinking till we felt our kid was popped. Yet, it didn't matter. The police were looking for me, Lacey was now an accomplice, and I was going to do anything I could to ensure that nothing happened to her. Just fucking drive. He started fumbling around with the keys, shaking erratically as he tried to put the pin into the ignition. Lacey cracked him around the back of the head with her magnum. "Get a move on, dick brain, before I kill you myself." He leant over the headrest and kissed me on the cheek before jumping back and landing with a playful bounce behind me. She stared back into her travel mirror. I looked at Kingsley. He still hadn't started the car. The shock he must have felt when I jammed the tip of my gun into his cock and pulled the trigger must have been what the pinnacle of nightmares are made of. It was empty. He looked at me as if he was going to throw up. "The next one is for real." He started the car and we got moving. The radio was on. Some reporter was talking about the recent murders. She mentioned my name. She called me a monster. I started to get incredibly infuriated. A tense knotting grinding my stomach left me feeling sickened and wretched, and I wanted to kill the stupid bitch on the radio. She'd insulted me, called me a monster. Of course, yes, I was a monster. The nastiest, grisliest, the most terrifying monster of all time, but she didn't have the right to say that about me. Who did she think she was, just to pass judgment up on me? I turned off the radio, closing my eyes and focusing on my breathing. Started to calm. "So you really killed all those people?" Kingsley muttered. "Yes." "I'm guessing you killed Michelle too?" "Yes, but honestly, I didn't mean to." He started to cry. "You're fucking insane, you need fucking help." Lacey slapped him around the head. "Don't talk to my lover like that, you pig." "Shut up, who the fuck even are you?" "No, wait, I don't care." He turned to me. "I mean, Jesus Christ, Dwayne, it's like you didn't kill Naomi as well," he said. "I want to kill Naomi," Lacey hissed. "What?" I said. "I want to kill Naomi." "No fucking way," Kingsley blurted. A million thoughts ran through my mind at that moment as I tried desperately to find an easy solution to my problem. I didn't want to kill Naomi, but Lacey did. I closed my eyes and asked the devil what I should do. He responded with, "Serve her and always serve her." I knew then what I had to do. "You know where she lives." Lacey shrieked with joy, giggling in the back seat like an excited schoolgirl. It got me hard. "No fucking way, I'm not doing it." "I'll blow your dick off." I pushed my gun deeper into his crotch. He squirmed, sweating buckets. "Please don't make me do this, Dwayne. I'm fucking begging you." "So should I blow your dick off then?" "No." "Then get a bloody move on then." When we arrived at Naomi's house, we parked in the driveway up against the house as usual. I got out and went to the door. Lacey stayed with Kingsley and made sure he didn't do anything stupid. I rang the doorbell. The television set was booming in the living room, so loud that I could hear an episode of Tales from the Crypt playing like it was right in front of me. It was too loud and they didn't hear me ring. I rang again, and after a few seconds I heard shuffling from behind the door. The latch clicked and the door creaked open. "Hi, Mrs. Fisher." She stared at me, confused and a little wary. "Hi, Dwayne. What are you doing here?" "I'm here to see Naomi." "She isn't in." Something in her eyes told me she was lying. She must have heard about me on the news, I thought. I didn't waste any more time. I grabbed Mrs. Fisher by the hair and kneed her in the face. Her nose erupted with blood and she fell on the floor in the porch. The sound her skull made when I stepped on it was gruesome. It even made me cringe a little bit. She was still alive and conscious, so I dragged her into the living room. Mr. Fisher was fast asleep on the sofa. His mouth was wide open with a string of drool rolling down his chin. "Wake up, you fat pig." I cracked him over the head with my revolver and dragged him off the sofa. I didn't even give him a chance. I shot him dead. The bullet shattered his skull, spilling his brains all over the living room rug. Mrs. Fisher screamed. It was beckoned Naomi. She came strolling in, at first oblivious to the horror that was unravelling in her home. When she entered, she was smiling. She was wearing a pair of sweatpants and a small pink crop top. "What's all the noise about? I heard..." Her face turned pale and she vomited. The sight of her father's brains splattered all over the floor was just too much to stomach. She started to scream. I laughed, then shot her in the kneecap. The whole thing erupted in an explosion of blood and bone, leaving behind nothing but a bloody mush. Her mother, although battered and broken, attempted to go to her daughter's aid. I shot Mrs. Fisher in the head before she even got close. Naomi was crying hysterically and screaming in agony. She looked at me and said nothing. I didn't go back. I sent Lacey in to take care of it while I sat in the car with Kingsley. As we were sat waiting, I had Kingsley call everyone he knew, using his newly installed car phone, and let them know about a huge party at Naomi's house. At first he refused, but eventually I got my way. Kingsley and Lacey waited in the car. The party wasn't even for us. I took the bodies of our victims upstairs into the bathroom and cut them up in the bathtub before packing them tightly into black bin liners. Within a couple of hours the house was crammed, packed full of drugged up and alcohol slaughtered party animals. I called the police and left an anonymous tip about a murder. I gave Naomi's address. I dumped the bin liners in the swimming pool. Blood began rising instantly, and within a couple of minutes the whole party had descended into chaos. Before leaving, I emptied Naomi's parents' safe, then sprayed Dwayne and Lacey forever on their bedroom wall in red spray paint. I wanted to leave a statement, something that told the whole world that Lacey and I were a force to be reckoned with. We left the party just before the police arrived. I had Kingsley drive us up to some woods just outside of Brighton. We'll stay here for tonight. Think things through. Tomorrow we'll figure out what we're going to do. 16. That night in the car, I couldn't sleep. Neither could Kingsley. He just kept staring at me, shaking his head and muttering to himself. Lacey crashed out in the back seat. She was curled up in a blanket we found in the trunk. Her head was rested up against the car door and she looked nothing but sweet and innocent, which to me, she was. Every time I looked at her, my heart stopped, skipping a beat before staggering into a surging pulse. Boom, boom, boom. The urge to curl up next to her, kiss her gently on the forehead, run my hands up her skirt and slide my fingers into her soft, warm pussy was eating me up inside like a fuck-hungry succubus, indomitable, making my manhood her own. And the notion of scrapping it all together, getting some sleep next to my woman, fooling around for a bit, forgetting about Kingsley and just letting him do a runner, was a hard one to deny myself. But I knew in my heart what had to be done. I'd been thinking about it ever since he phoned me. I mean, I almost blew his brains out at McDonald's, slathered them all over the restaurant entrance and collected his teeth for my collection. But I didn't. I took him hostage instead. And you know what? Not knowing why I'd made him my detainee didn't really bother me. Most likely it was because the thought of killing him didn't quite settle with me the way I'd most liked. After all, we'd been friends since we were 6 years old and I did genuinely quite like the guy. But then who can ever be sure of anything these days? The matter of fact is, he had to die. It was as simple as that. The inside of the car was steaming. An oily fog rose from beneath the seats, enveloping me in Satan's haze, which then, when being terrorized by the owner of hell, began grinding every impulse I had down to nothing but jagged beats of carnage and mindless mayhem, leaving me also with an endowment, a perfectly wrapped message scrawled out especially for me. Kill him now, Dwayne. It's kinda that way. Kingsley by now had stopped gawking at me and was staring despondently out the car window, fidgeting with his keys. Clink, clink, clink. I snatched the keys and put them on the dashboard. He jumped when I snatched them, backing up into his seat. I guess he thought I was about to kill him. Calm down, Kingsley. I'm not going to hurt you, alright? He looked at me and nodded his head pathetically, but this only infuriated me more. I just told him I wouldn't kill him and I didn't even get a thank you from the prick. As I stared back at his tear-jerked face, I imagined holding the little prick down on the kitchen floor, the kettle boiling ferociously on the counter, steam billowing in a large, moist cloud above us. Lacey is standing behind me. She's preparing the tea. 2 sugars? She asked. I turned to her, my hand still gripped tightly round Kingsley's neck, pushing my thumbs deep into his Adam's apple. He chokes. I laugh and squeeze harder. The kettle clicks, the boiling rolls down to the finish. I pour splashes into his eyeballs first and watch the skin melt away in front of me. the whites of his eyes explode into a shocking red, scalded and blind, before I slip the tip of my kitchen knife into the slit of his left eyelid, stab slowly into the base of his skull and wrench the ogle straight out the socket. "Why are you doing this then? Why can't you just let me go?" Kingsley said, shuffling about in his seat like a 4-year-old desperate for the toilet. "I need your help with something, that's why." His face turned pale, more so than it already was, before stumbling out his reply. What is it?" "Don't look so scared," I reassured him, and patting his shoulder like we were still best buddies, yet the whole time I was thinking about mutilating the son of a bitch. "I just need your help digging a grave, that's all." He shrieked. He shrieked like a little girl when he shrieked. "No, I won't do it, Dwayne." I grabbed him by the hair, yanking his head and smashing it on the gear stick, busting his lip and chin open in the process. "Will you please shut up? Lacey's trying to sleep." He groaned. I guess he understood. "Now get out of the car. I need your help." "What's gotten into you?" "No, I told you, I'm not doing it." He felt my gun press into his kidney, twisting the nozzle like a screwdriver before cocking it back. Click. He flinched. "What's it going to be, Kingsley?" Okay, just put the fucking gun down, I'm begging you." He started blubbering, breaking down in front of me, quivering like a prostitute in Antarctica as he grabbed my t-shirt. Please. "Jesus, Kingsley," I hissed. "Have a little respect for yourself, would you? I mean, Christ, mate, you're acting like a fucking child right now. Just get out of the fucking car and help me dig this grave, you thick twat." I jabbed my weapon further into his kidney. He stopped arguing, backed away and hopped out of his car. If it'd been me at that moment, I'd have run for it. Kingsley's walk was aloof. He didn't see his opportunity. I led him down into the woods, taking a path so that I could find my way back. It took a while before the devil told me to stop, and when he did, I told Kingsley to dig. "I thought you wanted me to help, not dig it myself." We only had one shovel. I threw him the shovel. I couldn't tell you for the life of me where it came from, but he stared at it with deep anguish, a pain that was so apparent the strings of my own heart were a little manipulated. "Just get a move on, Kingsley." After that, we didn't say a word to each other, and I just stood there and watched as my best friend obviously dug his own grave. When he turned up to tell me he was finished, I already had my gun pointed at the pit. He backed away, turning to the muddy wall and attempting to clamber up to the edge. "And where do you think you're going?" The human in him turned to acknowledge me, and he lost his grip on the edge, slipping back into the pit. My hands were shaking, the guns jittering around wildly as I tried to aim it at his stupid little face. Every part of me was screaming at myself not to kill him, to just walk away and leave it be. But I couldn't. But I also couldn't pull the trigger either. And as I stood contemplating over my next move, gazing down at Kingsley crying hysterically and covered in dirt, I suddenly found my foot shifting the muck back into the hole. The first clump landed on Kingsley's chest and he screamed, "Please don't do this, I beg you, Dwayne." "I'm sorry," I said, kicking another pile of dirt back into the pit. "Dwayne, no, please, just shoot me instead." "I can't." I started to cry and turned away from him to hide my pain, blubbering into the neck of my t-shirt, looking down at a long line of green snot hanging from my left nostril and dripping onto the forest bed beneath me. I wiped it clean. Then, I didn't waste any more time. After that, I just got the hole filled in as quickly as humanly possible, ignoring any plea of desperation or shriek of panic Kingsley invoked upon me. It was a long while until enough of the original dirt was back in the pit to smother Kingsley completely. That's a long time to listen to your friend scream and beg you for his life while you bury him alive. 17. I'd finally managed to start drifting to sleep, eradicating the filth and disturbance from the seedy cracks of my molested mind, when a strange noise coming from outside the car awoke me. It sounded like someone walking up behind us, the twigs snapping underneath heavy feet, bushes rustling and a strange squealing, much like that of a newborn piglet, convulsion from its lungs. My heart was pounding, desperate to burst out of my chest and make an escape for its own, pumping itself along through the muck with a bloody slaver before running out of juice, immobilized and being shriveled like a prune by the early morning sun. The trembling sensation of being the prey for once suddenly hit me, shattering any shred of masculinity and power I had left nothing but to a puddle of proverbial guts and organs. Lacey rested gently beside me, sleeping soundly as a dark shadow cast over her face. I could see a man standing outside the window. He was wearing a purple and gold clown suit with his face half covered by a strange mask, the other half rotting, melting from his face in thick clumps like salsa sauce. At that moment I started to get a little bit hungry. It looked appetizing. Lacey groaned, shifting beside me, fluttering her eyelids before stretching out to cuddle me. "You have to get up, there's something outside," I said, shaking her awake. The tip of the clown's axe was pressed up against the glass of the window as he stared in and gazed at me, smiling, and upon his portrait of rotting flesh there was still a row of straight and stained yellow teeth sprawling up to the cheek, with the other half of his smile that was painted clowns. "We have to go." He was tapping the axe on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Lacey suddenly jumped, realizing what was happening, and screamed, throwing out her arms and accidentally punching me straight in the face. Then, smash! The glass came piling through, shattering into thousands of pieces and exploding into the inside of the car. A strong hand grabbed me by the ankle, squeezing it tight as he dragged me effortlessly through the window. I tried to kick, fight back, but it was no use. The clown was too strong. "What the hell do you want from me?" He didn't answer. Instead, he burst out into a violent cackle, shrieking wildly before convulsing into a horrid moo. When he dragged me down onto the ground outside the car, he rolled me over and stood on top of me, drooling and spitting repulsively, pulling his cock from his trousers and beating off madly, jerking his cock around like a gamer handling a joystick, flashing his axe around crazily and screaming utter garble. I tried to shift him off me, but it was no use. Lacey clambered out the window. I wondered then why she didn't use the door, and hurled herself onto the back of the clown, wrapping her arms around his neck and clinging on like a baby chimp. He didn't budge, and still laughing madly, let go of his cock and tore Lacey from his back with a vicious tug. I watched as she spun off from the top of the beast, her arms way back and her neck pushed forward as she face-planted the floor, cracking her skull on a jagged rock. My attempt to scramble from the ground to help her was short-lived, and the clown kicked me in the teeth before stamping on my head. My mouth filled with blood and I started to choke, gargling on the liquid of life, ironically suffocating to death on it, as I stared up into the starry night sky and prayed for my life. No one answered, not even the devil, and I suddenly felt incredibly alone and completely abandoned. A chunk of decaying flesh fell from the clown's face, hitting me in the cheek and splashing across my lips. It didn't taste too bad, and like I said, I was hungry. It was then, as I enjoyed the taste of someone else's flesh, I was kicked in the stomach. I stopped feeling so hungry, and, I'm guessing, he knocked me out after that, being that I don't remember anything else. 18. It was the screaming that woke me up. Lacey screaming. I could hear her shrieks of agony, whining, begs for mercy, the sounds of a young woman being tortured in the room next to me. It took a while for my eyes to focus. My head was spinning, partly the hangover, partly being stamped on like a glass at Jewish wedding. Mazel tov. When I tried to stand up, a forceful yank took me by the gut, winding me badly and sending me tumbling backwards. I hit my head against the concrete wall and let out a girlish yelp. I sounded scared. I sounded feminine and weak, like a schoolgirl trapped down the farmer's well. I started to cry, listening to the sounds of my soulmate shattering in agony, whilst being able to do anything about it. My thoughts were to fight, of course, to survive, to kill, but my waist had been wrapped in chains, my ankles in shackles. There was no way in hell I could escape. So I waited. I waited for him to come to me. He tortured her. I listened. I found a half-pint of whiskey in my jeans back pocket. I don't know where it came from, but it looked really good. By the time I'd worked my way through the liquor, Lacey's screaming had died down and all that was left were the muffled weeps of desperation. She was alive at least. There was a door opposite me. It was wooden and splintered, the kind of door you'd see on an old garden shed or an outback toilet. I couldn't take my eyes off it, and simultaneously I began to feel incredibly detached from myself, as if I were looking down on this turn of events, not really being there, just watching and simply judging without concern. A weird feeling, and for a moment, nothing but calm and contentness. Then came the fear. It was when the door opened. The shadow of the clown crept in first, the door creaking slowly, a gentle sparkle from the tip of his bloody axe peeking round the corner and staring straight at me. Suddenly I found myself shouting, screaming at it. I tried to stop, but I couldn't. "Come on then, come fucking get me." That must have pissed the clown off, because the door swung open, splintering on the back of the wall with a sharp snap and almost coming off the hinges. The snarling face of a mutant clown gawked at me, dribbling a bloody stream of saliva from thick red lips, his half a row of yellow teeth sprawling in amongst rotting flesh and corroding skin. His feet were bare and naked and monstrously long, and he stunk of fish and death. I wondered how he ever found shoes to fit with feet that big. The thought evaporated as soon as I watched his huge flippers slap across the hardwood floor towards me, leaving bloody footprints as he trod. A chunk of his flesh fell off from his face, landing with a huge splat between my legs. I was almost sick. I wasn't so hungry this time. As I stared up to look, I was almost sick again, and I gagged. Then the clown hit me. He knocked me out. I had this strange dream, or, well, it wasn't really a dream, more so random scenes jumbled up together of which I struggled to make any sense of. I guess it was something like this. An old man wearing a basketball jersey carved a leg of meat in front of me, while an old lady, I presumed his wife, sat motionless, smiling dumbly with eyes glazed and a drugged up awe at the blade cutting deep into the flesh. Blood squirted from the fresh veins. It was fresh meat. 2 old dead people sat around the table with us. Butcher Gramps turned to me and laughed. "You want the first serving, son?" I panicked, stood from my seat to make a swift turn to run, but I slipped. When I hit the concrete floor, it cracked around me, opening up into a gaping hole. The flames from hell burnt my skin, my eyes melted away in the sockets, guts were torn out of me by tiny demons. The pain and terror I experienced was so real that I swear it might just have been that. Real. A whirl of black smoke suddenly cooled round me and lifted me from the flames. Like fruit in a blender, it spun me around, hurling me from side to side and occasionally launching me up into space before gravity would send me plummeting back to Earth. Around the 4th time I went to space, upon re-entry, I landed in the middle of a black swamp. The water was up to my neck and I could feel small fish and snakes nibbling at my feet, my ankles, my cock. I was naked, completely butt-fucking naked. My heart sunk deep in my chest. The fear was like anything I'd ever felt. I tried to swim, hoping I might reach dry land. Then something dragged me under. Yellow eyes peered through the black clouds of muck rising from the swamp's surface. They blinked at me, circling around me, but never breaking eye contact. Suddenly, I was lost in black slits of its pupils. So wise and old, I thought. I was transfixed on this thing that was about to kill me. As it crept in closer, I could see its face. I was staring into the mouth of a crocodile. Jagged teeth clustered in a wide, elongated jaw opened up towards me. The croc lunged, still peering deep into my soul, and latched onto my hip, sinking its teeth deep into my spleen. I punched and kicked, but it was no use. Croc too strong. I gave up and waited to die. It didn't really bother me. I'd never been scared of death. It's just something that happens. Like shit. Shit happens all the time, and so does death. I did think about Lacey though, and the only downfall to death being that I could no longer protect her. But shit happens. Just like death does, I guess. I was awakened by Lacey shaking me violently and shouting in my ear, "Dwayne, wake the fuck up. We don't have much time." Opening my eyes, I could barely believe that Lacey was still functioning, considering what she'd been pulverized to. She could have been dead, but strangely the girl was on form, calm and ready to move. How that was possible, I had no idea. All teeth besides the bottom two had been knocked out of her mouth, both eyes black and swollen shut. The muscle around her jaw was blue and purple, deep lacerations to the body and face, and a stab wound in one of her thighs. I kissed her, then dragged myself up into sitting position and looked around the room. The clown had left us unbound. We were able to move around freely, but the only way out was through a large metal door, which I assumed was bolted shut from the other side. "There's no way out," I said. "Not through the door, I've already tried. But what about that air vent?" She glanced up at the ceiling. There was a small grate, just about big enough for us to squeeze through. The construction of the building itself looked weak and haggard, the cement crumbling and damp, and I doubted the structure of the vent would hold our weight. But again, we had no choice. It was either risk it or be killed. "Fine, I'll go first and see if it's stable, then I'll pull you up." "Okay." Lacey gave me a boost and I ripped out the grate. As I expected, it popped out like a brittle cracker and brought the chunks of cement down with it. The vent itself, though, had survived the damage. I hauled myself up into the tiny loft space. It was pitch black and smelt strange, like rotting flesh. I could hear rats and cockroaches scarpering and fluttering through the passage. It made me cringe. "Give me your hand," I said. Lacey grabbed my hand and I hauled her up into the loft space. "Which way do we go?" she questioned. The vent passage split 3 ways, meaning 3 choices. I'd rather have one choice. At least then if things went wrong, I'd know that it was inevitable and couldn't be helped. I didn't want to die knowing the reason for my death was down to making the wrong decision. I suppose killing all those people is what got me into this mess in the first place, although I do see that some events occur by fate. And when they come, how you deal with them is up to you though. You see, the right choice would most likely lead me to death, because I had a feeling that was where the end of this story was going for me. I'd written a few horror novels myself. I could see it happening. Abiding by that logic, I declined the desire to turn right and decided to test fate. The left passage's possibilities made me feel incredibly sick and nauseous, and I even threw up. It took a lot of courage to go against my instinct. After all, my theory could be totally horseshit. Nonetheless, I stuck with my plan. "We go left," I said, shuffling around on my knees and staring down the vent. "Are you sure we go left?" "No, but we have to pick one." "Okay." Every movement we made inside the vent echoed loudly, ringing out for what seemed like forever. I could feel that the structure could only just about hold our body weight, and that if we didn't get out of there soon, the whole thing would collapse. Suddenly Lacey let out a loud shriek. "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god! Jesus Christ, what the fuck is it? Cockroaches, hundreds of them, they're everywhere." Okay, just keep your voice down." Quickly pulling my lighter from my pocket, I sparked a flint and then ignited a flame. It was bright and lit up the whole vent. "Jesus," I said. Lacey hadn't been overreacting. There really were hundreds of the things, scattering, fluttering and crawling all round the small space. I suppose our own clambering had muffled the sound, but once still, we were surrounded by a deafening noise of loud buzzes of mindless tapping. "We have to get moving," I said. Lacey was covered in the insects. They were attracted to her blood and wounds. They were feeding off of her. She was tough, though. She didn't complain. She just kept moving. We must have been crawling for about 5 minutes before I smelt fresh air. The moonlight was creeping through the grate and I could just about make out the trees on the outside. We were still in the woods, which meant that Kingsley's car may not be far from our plot. I pushed the grate, but it wasn't as weak as the first one. It took me a few attempts before it popped off. I was so happy to smell the fresh air I didn't even climb out of the vent. I just threw myself out. I landed on the forest floor with a heavy thud, spraining my wrist, but I didn't care. It appeared we had been trapped in an old timber factory. I quickly got up and helped Lacey down. We stood and kissed. It was a passionate kiss. She fed me her tongue and I fed her mine. I stroked her cunt before pulling away and taking her hand. "We have to get out of here. Follow me." 19. The presence of the moon was strong that night, flooding the woods with a dim-lit shadow, glistening off the muddy floor and shining the way. Lacey was staggering beside me. Her leg had been stabbed pretty deep, but we didn't stop. We kept moving, through the shrubbery, thorns, trenches and mud, until we arrived at a small dirt road. I looked up and spotted electric cables strung over us. We follow the power lines. They'll lead us back to civilization, I said. What about police? What about them? They're looking for you, remember? Shit. Yeah. Alright, I know what we'll do. We'll head back to mainland and take us a car. Drive up my place and pick a few things up, then head for Bristol. We'll hide out there while we decide what to do. Okay. Let's take a look at your leg first. It looks like it's bleeding pretty bad. I'm fine. Yeah, well, let's have a look anyway, just to be sure. She moved her hand from the wound so I could see. It was bad. Really bad. How she was able to stand was beyond me. I tore some of my shirt from the waist and wrapped it around her leg, knotting it as tight as I could to keep the pressure on the laceration. After that, we started walking, following the lines along the path. I was half expecting the clown to jump out from the shrubs and hack us to pieces at any moment, but he never did. We didn't speak much as we walked, stumbling, in silence mostly, under the dead angels of the sky. I stopped for a second and sparked up a drag-tailed cigarette I found in my jeans pocket. The glow stick shone bright red as we continued, and each puff from the cancer stick was like an elixir of life, healing me with each dose. I smoked it halfway, then gave it to Lacey. She seemed to enjoy it even more than I did. I knew this because when she took the first toke, she let out a loud groan of indulgence. We still hadn't spoken about what the monster had done to her, and as much as I wanted to ask her, I knew I should give it time. We'd been walking for what seemed like an hour or so when a strange feeling suddenly washed over me. I froze. What the hell are you doing? Lacey said. We have to keep moving. After that, everything she said went in one ear and out the other. I could see her lips moving, but no sound was apparent to listen to. It was then, as I stood staring blankly at Lacey screaming and shouting, that a voice inside me began speaking. It was as if someone was narrating my life. The pair had seen and done a lot of bad things in their lifetimes, and it seemed that karma had now decided to claim the debt it was owed. He knows we've escaped, I hissed. He fucking knows. He's angry. He's fucking angry. He wants to cut our limbs off with hedge trimmers and pop our fucking eyeballs out with pliers. I was out of control, shouting and rambling. Something inside of me just didn't settle right. What the hell are you talking about? I started shaking. I could feel the clown's anger coursing through my veins like powerful venom. My stomach was churned, frustration, bubbling huge waves of turmoil and dysfunction, forcing me to throw up. The clown, he knows we've escaped. How the hell do you know? I can't explain it. It's like we're connected. Lacey stared at me like I was crazy. She had the right to. I thought I was crazy. I mean, being possessed by the devil I could come to terms with. It's not like that kind of thing hasn't been reported many times over the recorded centuries, but I was dealing with something else. I felt like I knew the clown better than I knew myself, and the voice inside my head, narrating our situation and past events so far, was the clown himself. He was in my head, but how? I was still shaking violently, jittering around in the same spot like a drunk on a pogo stick. Lacey was stood facing me, her eyes welling up in tears. You're scaring me, she croaked. What's wrong? That registered, but for some reason not in the way that I'd have liked, and I snapped. The first punch knocked her clean to the ground. She landed with a heavy thud and skidded through the mud and into the shrubs. What the fuck is the matter with you, you freak? She roared. She was angry now, and her eyes suddenly lit up with fire that I fell in love with. It was burning strong. I dived on top of her, pushing my lips violently against hers before kissing her teeth. She opened her mouth and slid her tongue onto mine and tickled the base with the tip of her strongest muscle. I got a hard on. I pushed it into her cunt. She groaned, kissing me harder and digging her nails into my back. I pulled her jeans down before whipping my cock out and fumbling about down her groin area to get her entrance. She saw I was struggling and kindly helped me. Without saying anything, she guided me in gently. She was warm, soft and wet. It was like being inside a jam donut, sweet and tasty. I took it slow for a couple of strokes, teasing her a little bit by taking my penis all the way out of her cunt, then going in just a little bit with the head and making small circular motions around her clit. She looked so innocent while I fucked her, and I suddenly felt a great deal of control and power over her. She was my rag doll, my little fuck thing. I could fuck her and kill her, fuck her and leave her, get her to suck my dick while I punched the fucking shit out of her. I could do anything I wanted to the little whore. This thought really turned me on. Lousy little street rat, I spat. Time to get fucked like the whore you are. I went rabid and lost total control. I'd fucked a lot of girls like whores before, and also fucked a lot of actual whores as well, but I'd never felt and acted like the way I did with Lacey during that particular fuck of ours. Luckily, Lacey was a total freak, down for the dirty, the far out, over the edge radical, and all kinds of other gnarly, demented and fucked up shit. Or at least, that's what I thought of her. I could have got it all wrong. I got women wrong all the time, so it wouldn't have been a surprise if I'd read Lacey wrong also. I shoved my tongue deep into her mouth, clanging our teeth, or what was left of hers, together before biting down on her lip. She squealed. I fucked her hard, pounding deep with each powerful stroke. I watched her eyes gaze up at me, a look of agony and enjoyment at the same time in her vacant expression. She looked like she was being raped. Amazing. I rammed, violating her and fucking her cunt with everything I had. The gods watched down on me and cheered me on, tugging their almighty slogs and jizzing their fucking pants over my sex-crazed charade. Demons downstairs gave me power. She was mine. This young piece of flesh was mine, and I was splitting her in half like the fucking slut she was. Pure bliss. Pure fuck. Pure dirty sex. I went at it like a true professional, smashing her in like the last nail on a coffin. Bang, 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 bang. Smash it some more just to be sure. Bang, 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 bang. I was drenched in sweat, my heart going a million miles an hour, pounding viciously against my chest, splitting open my rib cage and bursting out onto the muddy path beside us. I fucked her harder. She groaned, shrieking with pain occasionally. Then I started to make noises, little grunts and moans. I was getting close to ejaculation. I destroyed the last bit of her cunt, smashing it in with all my weight, while my grotesque beer belly hanging over her as pure teenage face looks up at me, probably wondering, what the fuck am I doing with this ugly fuck? That only turned me on more, and I suddenly bust, flooding her holy grail with the soft white liquid of life. She moaned. My cum seeped inside of her. I rolled off and crashed down next to her. Thanks for that, babe. She said nothing. We should get a move on. I tucked my bits back into my pants and zipped up my jeans. Lacey did the same. Then we stood up and left. On the way down the path, we found a bag full of cocaine. It was a pleasant surprise, although a little creepy. We were nowhere near Kingsley's car, or so I suspected, and the bag had been hung on a tree, like someone had left it there for us. Whoever they were, I thanked them, then hoped they'd die. 20. We must have been walking for a few hours before we found a turning off the path that took us to a motorway. Lacey decided we should hitchhike. I kept my distance while she stuck her thumb in the air and flaunted her breasts. She was so beat up and broken that it didn't take long for some guy to pull over and offer her a lift. "I'm with my friend," she said, pointing down the road at me. I waved. He nodded. I couldn't see his face, it was too dark, but I just knew by the way he acknowledged me that he'd suddenly become a little uneasy about the whole situation. I mean, in all fairness, some girl had just stopped him in the middle of the motorway, battered, bleeding and looking like she'd been raped 1,000 times, then hollered for some strange male lurking in the bushes. I was covered in mud and blood too, so it really didn't look good. I looked like a fucking serial killer, which I was. "Hi," I said, walking up to the car. "Thanks, man, we've been stuck out here all night. My lady here, she's been attacked, we were kidnapped." "Jesus Christ, you need to find the police." No police." I watched his face squint with fear. He knew what was about to come. "Give us a lift." He started to shake before drawing for the ignition. He had no chance. I grabbed the dumb fuck by the hair and dragged his head out the window. "Smash his head in, Lacey." She laughed. I laughed. The man screamed. Smash, crack, punch. Each blow made an awful crunch. Blood poured from his nose, mouth and eyes. He went limp. I opened the car door and pulled him onto the floor and into the ditch. His skin was soft, although he looked old. He probably uses all those skin products, or he's never worked a day in his life, I thought, before snapping his neck like a twig. Another victim, another victory, another piece of joy. When I stepped on the corpse, I felt good again, alive and indestructible. Lacey and I were going to make it. I knew that for sure. Before I left, I kissed him on the forehead. "Thank you for your generosity," I said. The roar of the engine fired up and I turned left. Lacey was sitting in the driver's seat. I opened the passenger door. "Move, I want to drive." "Okay." "We'll head back to Brighton and park up for the night. Tomorrow we'll get you to a dentist and after that we'll sell this coke and get the hell out of this country." I pulled off from the hard shoulder, hitting the accelerator and shoving the motor into 75 miles per hour in about 1.2 seconds. And at the speed we were doing, the wind was coursing through the windows, circling around us like a hurricane, tearing up Lacey's hair from her head like a vacuum. It felt like a twister had engulfed us and was shredding us to pieces. I was in a natural disaster. I liked it. It felt manic, insane and radical. It made me feel free. I called it the breeze of freedom. Lacey turned and sighed. She looked worried, very unsure about the situation at hand. "What's the matter?" "Nothing," she screamed, not out of anger, but to be overheard by the roaring sound of a powerful zephyr and robot buffalo. We were also riding a robot buffalo. That's what I sometimes liken to cars. Robot buffalo. I wound the windows up so she didn't have to shout. I was enjoying the breeze of freedom, but I could see Lacey felt differently, so I gave in like I always do. I'm soft-hearted, I guess. "Don't start, Lacey. I know there's something up, so just tell me. You know I hate game bullshit. It's tiresome." "Nothing's the matter." "Is it about what the clown did to you?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Yes." "And what's the matter?" She said nothing for a while, staring out of the window at a passing robot buffalo. Then she sighed again and turned towards me. I could see there was a lot of pain in her eyes. I knew it was there, despite them being pretty much swollen shut. The doubt, the shame, the fear. She was feeling weak after what the clown had done to her, and I guess she was on the verge of giving up. Finally, she gave in. "It's just this plan. It's stupid. How will we go to a dentist when the police are looking for us? And if we manage to sell the cocaine, how do you expect us to get out of the country? Now there is something you should know about me. I'm a piece of shit. But not only am I a piece of shit, I'm a smart piece of shit. The best kind of shit. You see, a long time ago when I started writing, I decided to work under a pen name, Chucky Delgado. Everyone at work knows me by that name. Most have never seen me. Only my editor and magazine director had seen my face. Both hated the news and never watched television, surprisingly, considering their professions. I guess they'd grown to resent the media, having worked for it for so many years. It slowly ate them up inside like a flesh-eating tapeworm. After all, the business can be degrading. You put your heart and soul on the line and most people shit all over it just for the hell of it, just because they can. They might even like your work, think it's amazing and read it only in private, never seem to admit it, slating it to death just because they can. Writers get the worst of it, their shitty soul on scraps of paper, signed off with their own name. People never pick on the editor, unless he is known for being a moron. Otherwise it would be the author taking the beating. I like taking the beating. It actually makes me feel better about my writing, as after all, I'm a bitter fuck who will complain about anything and everything, and write about sex in an inhumane and grotesque manner. It offends some people, and with those types of people it makes me feel almost like the job has been done. I managed to preempt pissing you off, now I'm happy. Thanks. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, my pen name. Well, thanks to this facade, I could most likely convince my boss I have a story to do in, say, a country of my choice. Being a right-hand writer of his, it's not a hard task. He'd set up a private plane for me and my crew, no customs, etc., and we'd receive press cards to dispatch. Yeah, passports upon arrival, but I doubt Interpol will flag me just yet. I might even kill the pilot and crew and take the plane myself. When I explained this to Lacey, she seemed most delighted. She started rubbing my leg, slowly moving up my thigh and onto my crotch. I got hard. She licked her lips and unzipped me, moving her head down towards my bits. She whipped my cock out and held it firm, stroking the shaft before taking it in her mouth. The fact she had no teeth made the blowjob even better, probably the best I've ever had. I didn't last long. I groaned, forcing her head down and shoving my dick into her throat. Fuck, I moaned, busting my load into her throat. She gagged, but I held her head down. Take it, slut. She nodded. I pushed the last drops of life from my member into her throat, then dragged her up by the hair. She smiled and licked her lips. That was yummy. I need sleep now. Wake me up when we're back. No worries, babe. We're camping out tonight anyway, so just get rest. We'll get moving on with things tomorrow. She shut her eyes and fell asleep instantly. I drove back to Brighton and parked the car behind Preston Park, in between two motorhomes. We'll be safe here, I said to myself as I parked up the car. I didn't sleep. I just sniffed coke till the sun came up. 21. At around 9 a.m. I started the car and headed off to the White House Dental Surgery on London Road. An easy route. Straight down the hill, take a right at the traffic lights and it's the third road on your left. Lacey slept on the way there. She looked beautiful as always. No complications were met on the way, which was a nice change. When we arrived, I pulled the car round the back into the driveway and parked it right up against the back wall and gave Lacey a little nudge to knock her from her slumber. She groaned, shifting from side to side in her seat and rubbing her face with her hands. Her eyes opened just slightly, squinting under strong rays of sunlight. Where are we? She asked, coming to reality a bit. We're at the dentist. We need to get your teeth fixed up. Will they see me? Just say you're Julia Smith. Who's that? She's a friend of mine. You two look pretty similar and this is her dentist, so there should be no problem. But I look a state. That's okay. The more reason for them to check you in quicker. Just say your dentist is Dr. Loom. Okay. What are you going to do? I'll wait here until I see you in his office. That's it there. I pointed to the second-story window on the far right of the building. When I see you enter and he closes the door, I'll sneak up through the window. He'll try telling us he's unable to make your fake teeth there and then, but that's bullshit. He'll have some alternative for sure, especially when his life's involved. That makes sense. Yeah, but first we need to get that stab wound sealed up. Okay. I heated up the end of the car key till it was scorching and pressed it down on her wound. Skin sizzled and cracked. Smelled like chicken. She flinched but didn't scream. Took a few burning attempts to get it completely sealed, but after it was done it looked good. We wrapped the wound under jeans to make it look less obvious and cleaned her face with saliva and a hanky. When we were done, she still looked like shit. She looked like she'd been raped. You still look like crap, I said. Thanks. Just make up some bullshit story. Blag my way out of it, huh? Yep. She nodded, then slipped out of the car and headed into the building. I sat and waited, staring up at Dr. Loom's office window. I don't know what Lacey had said to the receptionist. All I do know is whatever it was, it worked, and it worked fast. She was stood looking out at Dr. Loom's office window within 5 minutes. I got out of my car and scaled up the building's fire escape stairs. The window was open, so I hopped inside. It took Dr. Loom a couple of seconds to register my presence, but when he did, his face went pale. A kind of pale a man only goes when he's staring at a man he knows is a serial killer. I smiled. He stumbled, almost fainting and knocking over his utensils. A nurse knocked on the door. Is everything okay, doctor? She asked. She had a squeaky voice, sounded very cute. He went to scream, but I pulled a drill to his temple before he had a chance. Tell her everything is fine, I told him. He did as I said. Everything is fine, Jean. I just dropped my drill, that's all. Okay, she said happily. Sally told me to tell you that your wife called earlier. She wants to know if you'll be home for dinner. He looked at me. I shook my head. No, he said. Tell her I won't be back till late. Okay. Then she left. I waited a few seconds until I heard the hallway door close. We were alone now. What do you want from me? Loom croaked, struggling to hold back the tears. It's okay, doctor. You don't have to hold your tears from us, I said, running the drill down the side of his face. Yeah, we like tears. I find them sexy, Lacey burst. Dr. Loom watched, half in fear, half in sexual excitement, as Lacey strutted over to him, shaking her tits and ass like a true whore. She grabbed his head. He flinched. Then she nuzzled his face in her breasts before yanking his head back and licking the salty tears from his face. "Yummy," she said. She punched him and spat in his face. He cried harder. "What do you want? I'll do anything, just don't kill me." I pointed at Lacey. She smiled, revealing her bloody gums and missing teeth. "Fix her lovely smile, won't you?" Dr. Loom said nothing for a moment, staring at her with that serious and inquisitive doctor look before shaking his head from side to side. "No, it's not possible." "No, it's not possible," he said sternly. "I'd have to take a mould of her gums, measure everything up and have the teeth made, which can take a few days." I laughed and pushed the drill into the side of his temple. "Then you die." "Yep, then you die," said Lacey. No, please, don't kill me," he begged. "Fix their teeth and we won't have to." "I told you I can't, it's not possible." "Well, that's too bad for you then, ain't it, Doc?" I switched on the drill. He went to scream, but I put my hand over his mouth. "You have 5 seconds to think of an alternative or I'm going to kill you. Do you understand?" He nodded. I uncapped my hand from his mouth. "Okay, there might be something I can do," he said. "We'll get cracking, Doc. But it will take me hours. What about my other patients?" "Call the receptionist downstairs and tell her to cancel all your appointments. Tell her you have an emergency here and you shouldn't be disturbed." He did as I said. The receptionist didn't ask any questions. She'd seen the state of Lacey when she walked in, and she even said on the phone that she felt extremely bad for the poor girl. No one was going to bother us. We had the dentistry on total lockdown. Lacey laid down in the dentist chair while Dr. Loom rummaged through a box of tools. I sat myself down by the door. "So what are you going to do?" I asked. He didn't reply. "Oi, shitface, my lover was talking to you," Lacey exclaimed. He didn't turn to look at us, but he answered regardless. "I'm going to have to use all the leftover teeth to create a bridge for your friend. It might look funny. These are all different teeth for different sized and shaped mouths, you know." "Don't worry about that," I said. "I just need her to have teeth so she can bite me when we fuck." He said nothing. Lacey giggled and started rubbing her cunt. "God, you get me so wet, baby," she moaned. "I want to fuck you right here, you slut," I said. "Let me suck your dick in front of this old prick." I whipped my cock out and walked over to her. She took it in her mouth and sucked. Dr. Loom wouldn't look at us. I wanted him to look. I needed him to look. "What's the matter? You faggot, doctor?" "No," he muttered. "We'll turn round and watch this cunt suck my dick." Lacey had taken it all in her mouth and was now gagging profusely, lines of saliva pouring from the sides of her mouth, cheeks like a puff of fish and tears streaming down her face. She loved to suck dick. I could tell. "I don't want to look," Loom said. "Look or I'll fucking kill you." He turned round. I could see the old fuck getting a little turned on. "Now touch yourself, old man." "No." "Touch yourself and like it or I'll rape you." Suddenly Lacey pulled her head away from my cock and gasped. "What the hell did you just say?" she burst. I stood there, staring at her, cock sticking out, erect and solid like a Yamaha handlebar. I said I'd rape him. "That's disgusting." She looked mortified. "Rape isn't cool, it's fucked up. Kill a motherfucker by all means, but rape the poor bastard? That's just bloody weird." I froze. "What?" I was shocked. "You don't go around raping people, Dwayne. That's just awful. Sex is a precious thing, you know." "Huh? Well, I never thought of it that way. Sorry. I guess I just got caught up in the moment." I turned and looked at Loom. He was frozen, much like I was, unsure of what to say or do. "You've never raped anyone, have you?" she asked. Yes, I have. Loads of people, and it was great," I thought. No, I haven't." I lied. I knew she wouldn't understand. "Good," she said, "or I'd leave you." I vowed then never to rape any living thing again. I loved Lacey too much to let such a fetish get in the way of what we had. After that, no one said anything. Dr. Loom began fixing up Lacey's teeth, while I fondled her breasts and finished myself off. I blew my load on the floor and left it there. It was a few hours before Loom had finished the procedure, probably a good 3 or 4. Well, that's it, all finished, he said, removing his rubber gloves. He scrunched them up and threw them in a bin by the door. Lacey sat up and smiled. They looked good, although some of them were gold and others were drastically smaller than the rest, which made her look a little bit wonky. But all in all, Loom did a pretty fine job. And besides, I liked the gold teeth. They gave her character, more than she already had. She looked like a cute, little, sexy, violent thug. What do you think? She asked. I think they look great. So do I. I love gold. I turned to Dr. Loom. Thanks, Doc. Much appreciated. He nodded but wouldn't look at me. Can you please go now? Of course, I said. Come on, Lacey, let's get going. Jumping from the dentist chair, she hugged Loom tightly. Thanks, she exclaimed, before heading over to the windowsill to begin climbing over the ledge. I watched the release of longing relief from Loom's eyes as he watched Lacey disperse. I could see him planning his future in his head, what he was going to do differently, to travel the world and spend more time with his family. Jesus, I almost felt bad for killing the old fuck. But I did what had to be done. It was really easy. I just took the drill I'd been threatening with, turned it on and shoved it into the side of his skull. It entered like butter, spitting blood out from the insertion, grinding through the bone and sending out small pieces of his brain through a tiny hole. He didn't make a sound. He died instantly. It was brilliant. We got back in the car and started driving. Where are we going now? Lacey asked. I need to make a call. Who? We need to ship this coke, remember? And I need to call the magazine and get us out of this fucking country. Lacey shrieked. Oh joy, I forgot about the cocaine. Rack up a few for the road. Already on it. I turned and looked at her. She already had a dollop of the substance on the dashboard and was separating into long, fat lines. That was quick, I said, noticing the speed in which she'd got the drugs out the bag and onto the dashboard. Yep, she sniffed one of the lines. You want me to suck your dick while you drive? Sure. She got to it. The streets were busy that morning, thriving with varied life, some scrambling to dead-end jobs, mouths stuffed with corporate shit and arseholes covered in lube, prepared for another day of getting butt-fucked and humiliated by the system. Others readied with forced smiles, masquerading the struggle to cope with their hopeless existences beneath. Some coated with failure, a distinct look that screams at every passerby, I'm useless, I have no future. They mope, dragging their feet from stoop to stoop, using time pointlessly, lost in a spiral of drugs and alcohol, or most likely unhappy and pissed off with the system for letting them slip into the sewer. I'm still unsure where I stand on the whole issue. People take drugs, at first at least, due to fascination or general interest. It doesn't take long to lead to addiction whether they like it or not. In reality, this is no one else's fault but the person's own. But then, when shit goes sideways, we're adamant on blaming the system for our problems, unable to admit that we can't get to grip of ourselves. I'm a drunk, a drug addict and a whore, and I have no one else to blame but myself. But for me, it never mattered. I never cared that I was a piece of shit. In fact, I liked it. I thrived on it. As I looked around at the streets swarming with human crap, I felt remarkably better about my own self, and my position in life seemed to brighten up vibrantly into a flourish of colour. Life exploded around me and it finally made sense that I wanted out. I wanted to get away. After all, I was still free to do as I wished. Money was on the way and a plane out of the country would be easy to sort. And yet everyone else around me was barely holding on. I felt incredibly lucky. I pulled up next to a phone box on London Road. Double yellow lines could suck my hairy nads, I thought. Lacey was admiring her new teeth in the rearview mirror. The gold twinkled under the rays of sunlight. She turned to me and smiled. I leant in and kissed her passionately, and pulled away and opened the car door. I'll be back in a second, I said. I need to make a call. Oh yeah, if you happen to see a traffic warden come by and he gives you jip, just flash your tits and tell him to fuck off. The poor bastard will be so confused and turned on he won't know what to do. She laughed, then nodded and went back to admiring her new teeth. I had a friend in the drug dealing business, Jeppy, A big player in town, a real pusher, both drugs and whores. I knew he'd be interested in the cocaine, so I gave him a call. I'd memorised his number by heart years back when I first got deep into the powder. I grew out of it after a while. Couldn't handle the come-downs. Always been more of a drinks man, me anyway. I dialed the number. It rang, but no one picked up. I tried again. This time someone answered. Hello? Hi, is this Jeppy? Yeah, who this? It's Dwayne. Dwayne Hunter? Yeah. Oh shit, dog. Dwayne Hunter, you fucking slobbergullion. Long time, buddy. Yeah, long time. Yo, I've seen you on the news and shit, man. You're in deep shit, bro. I know, but don't worry about that. I have some cocaine. Shit, why didn't you say so? You didn't let me. How much you got? I don't know, a few kilos. Is it good? It's the shit. How much you looking for it? I'll make a meal for the entire bag. That's enough to get my lady and me out of this shithole. Come around and see me. I'm at the snooker club. I'm outside now. Okay, see you in a minute. Wait at the bar. I put the phone down and went back to the car. Come on, get out, I said. We're gonna go see a friend of mine about a dog. She got out. I grabbed the bag from the back seat. We left the car illegally parked. The snooker club was opposite us, above the Safeway supermarket. We headed inside and up to the bar. I ordered a whiskey on ice. Lacey had a mojito with extra rum and lime. We sat in silence and waited for Jeppy. A couple of guys were playing a game of snooker and talking about sluts they fucked. I felt happy and sure they didn't know who I was. When Jeppy arrived, it didn't matter. He nodded, indicating for us to follow him. We went upstairs and into his office. We sat on the sofa and put the bag in front of us. Jeppy sat in his desk chair and fiddled about on his computer for a few seconds before putting on some of the Beatles. Twist and Shout played first, on medium volume. We all sat and sipped our drinks. Then Jeppy clapped his hands, indicating that we should start getting down to business. I agreed. I picked up the bag and handed it to him. So take a look. Like I said, it's the shit, I said. He opened up the bag and pulled a brick out. It was already open, the one Lacey and I had been sampling. He placed it on the table and stuck his finger into the insertion I'd made and scooped out a fine lump onto his fingertips. Examining it first, his eyes twitched with habit and curiosity. He nodded his head. Looks good. Now for the real test. He sniffed the powder from his fingertip. He said nothing for a while, letting the chemical pass through his nasal passage and run to the back of his throat. He gagged. The taste was foul. He looked at me and stuck his thumb up. A mil sounds good. 1.5 mil, Lacey said. Jeppy looked at me and raised one eyebrow inquisitively. You said 1 mil, Dwayne. I did, I said. Well, I'm saying 1.5, Lacey hissed. Jeppy looked at me. I shrugged. He shook his head. Fine, 1.5. Not a penny more, you whore. I knew he was joking, so I didn't kill him. Lacey found it funny. We made the exchange, had a couple of drinks and played a game of snooker, then left. No hassle, no problems, just civilized drug dealing. When we got outside, much to my surprise, the car hadn't been ticketed and was still parked up where I'd left it. I was lucky. Someone obviously had started taking a liking to me. Thanks God, you piece of shit. Took your time, don't you think? Fuck him anyway. Always preferred Satan better. We got in the car and drove off £1.5 million richer. We stopped off in a parking lot and fucked to celebrate. Then we made like Jack and hit the road again. 23. We decided on heading up to Bristol. Lacey wanted to grab some things from her house before we took off. I didn't mind. I fancied taking a shower anyway. We'd been driving for a couple of hours when I started to feel exceedingly strange, much like I had done in the woods. It crept up on me like a monster under the bed, its fearsome claws deep in my soul. Lacey was asleep, so I stopped the car on the edge of the motorway to catch my breath. As if the blood pumping through my heart carried a poison, veins flushed with a perturbation overflowing my being and mind, and it began drifting slowly until eradicating my compos mentis completely. I was left standing in a black hole, transfixed at the clown hissing away at me. He had a string of balloons floating softly above his head. He tied them to his wrists so they couldn't fly away. "What the hell do you want from me?" I said. He said nothing, only smiled. I stepped closer. He didn't move. I said, "What the hell do you want from me?" Again, he said nothing. Well, this time he moved forward, just an inch. He offered me a balloon. It was green. I love green. I took the balloon. I couldn't help myself. The clown wrapped the string around my wrist so it couldn't fly away. It didn't work. I was too light and it sent me soaring into the sky. A witch flew past on her broom and stuck a pin in me. It hurt and the balloon felt it too. Pop. Swallowing air like water, falling through the clouds and blue sky, I was hurled back down towards the old timber factory. I crashed through the wooden roof and suddenly found myself sitting around the dinner table with the family that I dreamt about. The old guy in the basketball jersey was carving a leg of meat. He offered me a piece. "Yes, please," I hissed. That's when I realised that my voice was not my own. It sounded like I had a mouthful of sick. "Why are there dead people sat around the table?" I was referring to the two dead old folks sat next to each other, opposite me. No one said anything. The old man passed me a slice of meat. I ate it. It was good. When I was done, I stood from the table and went downstairs. I was in a basement. I could hear screaming. It sounded like Lacey. For some reason I knew where she was. When I got there I saw Lacey crying in a pool of blood, plus myself hunched up in a corner, shivering with some kind of fatal sickness. We both looked weak. I couldn't bear to look, and as I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I screamed loud. The guy staring back at me was the clown. Then I woke up. Lacey was still fast asleep next to me. The silence was horrible, so I turned on the radio. It took a few minutes to gather my thoughts, then I got back on the road. Lacey woke up and I started the engine. "Why did we stop?" she asked in a small, squeaky morning voice. I needed a piss. I couldn't tell her what was happening. She would never understand. Then something out of my control happened to make her despise me. A sudden news report came on the radio and it was about me. "Dwayne Hunter has struck again with a brutal massacre in Riley's snooker club on London Road." What the fuck? I didn't kill anyone at Riley's, I thought. 12 people were hacked to death. One other victim remains in critical condition and doctors say he probably won't make it. We have been informed that not only is Dwayne Hunter a violent killer, he is also a rapist, and most likely a child molester, but we have no evidence to prove that one claim in particular. The rape and murders we have certified as violent acts of Dwayne Hunter. We also suspect he has an accomplice, a young girl, but she is yet to be identified. I saw Lucy's face drop. She looked like she was about to kill me. I turned the radio off and said nothing, concentrating on the road, hoping that if I ignored the problem enough, it would go away. I was still trying to get my head around what they'd said about the murders at Riley's. Lacey didn't seem to take notice. She was caught up in the notion of me being a rapist. For a while, she said nothing. Then she let out a hellish scream and punched me in the side of the head. The car skidded, almost coming off the road, but I managed to straighten it out at the last minute. "Jesus Christ, are you fucking crazy? You trying to get us both killed?" I shouted. "You fucking son of a bitch, you piece of crap. You said to me that you'd never raped anyone." She raged with a fury fueled by more than wrath. "I know. I'm sorry. I was having a lot of problems. Things got away from me and I just slipped. It's vile. I know." I said I'm sorry. Honestly, I'll never do it again. After everything we'd been through, I guess I didn't expect her to be so mad. The last part was true though. Since we met, all I'd wanted was Lacey. "You think that matters?" "Well, yeah, sure, people can change." I looked at her. No, what you did was unacceptable, Dwayne. That kind of thing can never be forgiven. You violated the beauty of sex." She was serious. She'd been serious before, but this was different. Her demeanour was cold, empty. Only her eyes showed her pain as she stared at me. It was a look which made me cry. "No, please, Lacey, don't do this, I beg you." I put my foot down on the accelerator. I was doing about 100 miles per hour along the motorway. "I'll crash the car," I threatened. "Fine. Don't fucking test me, bitch. I swear down I'll fucking crash this car, you whore." "Good, do it." "Fine." Suddenly the police came racing up behind us. The red and blue flashing lights and blaring siren was very exciting, but I knew we'd never escape. Fucking pigs. I pushed down on the pedal, hell-bent on showing Lacey what she meant to me, and also hell-bent on showing these coppers a run for their catch. "Dwayne and Lacey forever, right?" She said nothing, turning away with a bitter hatred and shame for me. I swerved the car, taking it off the road and over into the next lane towards oncoming traffic. I dodged the zooming headlights with adrenaline pumped ease, my only concern for Lacey's upset. I turned to her. "I love you." Her eyes showed mixed emotions, the thrill of the chase now creeping through her body, but this time her gusto lackluster, failing to meet mine. The car zipped ever increasingly close, the impact almost always imminent. "Dwayne, I will show you how much I love you." I had to let her know, even if she did hate my guts. 25. When I awakened, I could hardly believe what I was looking at. I was sat at a desk, my fingers placed firmly on the keys of my typewriter, a thread of paper in the reel read. We crashed into a delivery van. Then everything went black. I screamed and tore the paper from the reel, scrunched it up and threw it to the ground, and that's when I noticed it. I was dressed in a purple and silver clown costume. My feet were huge, long, naked and bare. I touched my face. I could feel the falling, rotting flesh. I ripped the scab off. It was covered in pus. My heart started to pound in my chest, stomach churning in knots, skin getting hot under my outfit. Feeling panicked and dazed, I could barely stand. I was in shock. A cracked mirror on the wall caught my eye. I was scared to look but approached slowly. My horror was as suspected. I was turning into the clown. I began to weep. Suddenly a loud scream came from the other room. My stomach fluttered with joy. It sounded like Lacey. My legs have never moved so fast in my entire life, stampeding down the hallway and barging through a metal door to discover Lacey laid in a pool of her own blood and vomit. She was crying hysterically, clutching at her stomach, eyes black and swollen and teeth missing. And then I saw him. Me. Dwayne. Us. I saw myself, or him, or whoever it was, huddled up in the corner, shaking crazily, flesh cut, face bruised, clothes soaked in blood and piss. I stood staring for a while, breathing heavily, unable to comprehend the madness unravelling in front of me. Thought of slapping myself to try wake from this nightmare occurred. It didn't work. I was just left with a palmful of salsa meat. I freaked out when I caught a sight of the one-eyed man staring at me from the corner. This time, however, he was completely motionless, frozen in the form of a tattered poster taped carelessly onto the crumbling wall. Lacey looked at me, begging desperately with her eyes. I wanted to let her go. "Who the hell are you?" I said to my double. He said nothing. "Why'd you look like me?" Still, he said nothing. "Answer me." "What are you talking about?" Lacey said finally. "I'm talking about Dwayne. I'm Dwayne. His name is not Dwayne, it's Hudson." Suddenly it all came back to me, like a flood of truthful waves. The first thing I saw was the robbery and the murders in McDonald's. Originally, I had experienced it as Lacey and me shooting heads, breaking tills and being badass. But now, I saw it for what it was. Lacey and Dwayne had never been riding along willingly. They had been my hostages. Me. The clown. I picked up Dwayne, or Hudson, or whatever his name was, from a restaurant in town. I took him straight out the men's toilets. No one saw a thing. After that, I dragged him on a rampage. In my head, I was him, going wild and killing kids and fucking sluts. In reality, I was just a fucked up clown with a horrible face, dragging some poor sucker on a mindless murder tour. I suddenly remembered killing his girlfriend, Michelle. At least, that's what I think her name was. And hacking her up into hundreds of pieces and stuffing her in my suitcase. I made him carry his dead girlfriend around with us. Lacey we took from the festival. I raped her and made Hudson watch. Everything I'd seen and imagined was either fabricated or an experience completely warped by my strange reality that I'd cocooned myself. But now I'd come to realise it. I felt free, content, and for once in my life accompanied by a sense of self-assurance. My name is Chucky Delgado. I was tied to a tree as a young boy by a group of kids in the neighbourhood and set on fire. They ruined my face. My parents moved me to the woods, where I could escape the taunts and terror of other children. Then one day, I killed a cat. My bloodlust grew from there. My parents even got involved in the action. Happy families. It felt good to be home again. There was only one problem. I still loved Lacey. "I love you, Lacey," I hissed. She was crying, but she smiled at me, gave me a hard-on. I started to masturbate. "That's very sexy," she said. "I love you too, baby." Hudson was now looking at her. He thought she would get him out of this mess. Not a fucking chance. I smiled at him, walking over and deliberately slapping my feet against the hardwood floor. I grabbed his head. He squirmed. I killed him quickly, snapped his neck like a fucking toothpick. He went very cold, very quickly. Lacey screamed. "Please don't be scared," I hissed. "I love you." A string of saliva fell from rotting lips and landed on her thigh. She cringed. It made me feel bad, embarrassed. "Please, baby," I said. She backed away. I felt bad. I loved her, but she didn't love me back. I knew what I had to do. "I'll always love you, Lacey." I took off her shackles and helped her from the ground. "Go home now." She cried with joy. "Really? You mean it?" "Yeah," I hissed. "Now go." She moved quickly, but not quick enough. I stabbed her in the spleen. She coughed, gagged, and threw up a copious amount of blood. I laughed. Then I cried. She died in my arms. She looked beautiful. When she'd gone cold, I laid her on the ground and fucked her corpse. Her cunt was tight and dry, so I stabbed a hole in her stomach and fucked that instead. When I was done, I went upstairs, stroking the familiar taxidermy coyote as I passed. The family that I'd kept dreaming up was sitting around the table. "Hi, son," the old man in the basketball jersey said, cutting a slice of meat from a limb. "Sit down. Your ma's made your favourite." It was human flesh. I knew that for sure. I also knew that these guys were my family, although the dead folk around the table still confused me. "Who are they?" I pointed at the dead. "What the hell do you mean, boy? They're your grandparents. You feeling okay?" I stared at their cold, rotting and lifeless bodies. They had their arms up on the table like they were ready to eat. "But they're dead," I said. He laughed. "Yeah, but we love them all the same." I didn't know what to say, so I sat down, and as soon as my cheeks hit the wooden chair, I knew I was home. I smiled. Then there was a voice outside, blaring through a megaphone. "Come out with your hands up, we have you surrounded." My father laughed before drawing a shotgun from under the table, loading it with shells, and cocking it. "Delgados, we know you're in there. Come out with your hands up and we won't shoot." "Mum, go grab the artillery from downstairs," Dad said. "Tonight's gonna get a little messy."